Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. This is day 12 of Russia's illegal incursion into Ukraine. 12 days of battle and war. Pretty terrible. Got an interesting setup for you today because it looks like most of my panelists are preoccupied, so I'll be running this one alone, unless they trickle in later. But I do appreciate those of you who came in for the chat, and you've been definitely quite busy before we even kicked off tonight, so that's pretty cool. And fashionably late as usual, but he's here. I do have a co-host tonight, so I guess I will bring him in. And I have my IT guy from Charleston, South Carolina. So let me go ahead and drag his carcass in here. This is Mikhail Nightstrikesky,
Hey,
fashionably late.
hey, Marco.
Yes, see, there's a joke going on right now. I changed all the names on the Discord server to Russian and Ukrainian names, so in Cyrillic, if you're on my server, you'll probably notice that I am Marco Remius, because today is cold and hard. Gay. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that, and a lot of us really do like the movie Hunt for the Red October.
Yes, yes, we do. But I like down Periscope way more.
But I do too. But I will tell you something,
Hmm.
Sean.
Hmm.
I would like to have seen Montana.
I bet you would. So,
uh,
what are you going to do about Arizona? Well, I guess I'll
uh,
need two wives. At least. So,
uh,
anyway, um, I don't mean to seem like I want to get this over with or anything, but my sleep schedule's been really, really messed with
oh, yours
since we
too, huh?
started this. Well, I mean, 2 hours a day, every day for 12 days. I get kind of grumpy. But regardless, um,
We
we
have stuff to
have.
talk about, right?
Hmm?
How big is the docket this evening?
I think we'll be able to keep this under 2 hours.
All right.
That is my hope. I'm trying not to keep these guys up too late, or you guys that are in my panel when they're here too late. I did sort of catch Tony out about being online when he says he's in bed, but that's another argument for a different day.
Well, he can't stay up this late. He
No,
needs
he
his
was up.
he,
That's he
no,
was
no,
up.
no. He needs his glass of warm milk and his binky.
No, but the thing is he was up. Like if I don't know if you can see the New Watch podcast show prep room that I set up for him, but
I can't, and
okay,
that was annoying. That was annoying, Jimmy, because Jimmy's like, well, why can't you just jump down here? Because I have no permissions, Jimmy. I can't see it. Just drag me. And Jimmy's
well, I
like,
don't know if you're going to
okay,
be a regular there or not.
well, so
Anyway,
I'll have to talk to Jimmy and Tony about it.
if they want you as a regular, I'll set it up for him, so
But
you can have it. Anyway, you probably noticed that I changed the backdrop of the show a little bit. This setup is actually called Adidas.
what did Adidas denounce Russia and denounce the tracksuits?
No, no, it was just like the fonts and the color scheme and stuff, and I just thought, yeah, I
That
think
would
I'll
have been
do that today.
hilarious. That would have been hilarious.
So anyway, yeah, I had a theme for today, and it has completely escaped me because I was pretty ticked off by the news of the day, and um, what's really getting me on my nerves is the fact that I remember now. The theme of today's episode. If you notice that like every day I take the stories of the day and I can sort of tie them all together into a central theme. Today's episode, unfortunately, is called Reneging on the Reneg. So it's basically like Indian giving on a geopolitical scale, which I know that may seem like a slur of some sort, but there used to be a term when I was growing up called being an Indian giver, where you make a promise towards something, and then when it was time to fulfill that promise, you completely do a 180 and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You guys are crazy. I didn't promise you shit. So that's pretty frustrating. And if you're Ukraine, you're probably pissed. But if you're a viewer here for the last 12 days, I I've been saying this for 12 days. Like the animosity that is building towards the United States, the EU, and NATO is just in full effect now. This is accelerating almost at the same speed as the statistics of casualties, which you will see at the scroller at the bottom today, or the death tolls, or the refugee tolls. Like, these things are accelerating very quickly. Things are very quickly spinning out of control.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, in the interest of trying to keep you guys tied down
Okay.
too long, I don't have a problem with doing these so long. It's just if I can do them quicker, I will. We'll
Hmm.
just short, sweet, and to the point. But it also deserves our attention. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this every day.
Okay.
So
Before we start off, I
go ahead.
wanted to ask you something before we start off.
Go ahead.
Did you hear that Putin is recruiting Syrian fighters for Ukraine?
We talked about it yesterday. Where were you?
I thought we had.
No.
I didn't think we talked about it yesterday.
No. No. I did it
We
yesterday.
You did. Okay. All right. I
Yes.
was making sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
And if anybody wants to fact check me, just play like the last 30 minutes of yesterday's show. I'm pretty sure it was one of the last parts. But yes, yes.
But apparently, one of our news stations was
Picked it
covering.
up.
Yeah, Newsmax.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, this. So the Soviet Union, Russia, fine, whatever. The Russian Federation,
Mm.
um, basically, Putin is declaring that if any nation assists Ukraine diplomatically, with military equipment, in the support of a no-fly zone, yada yada yada, you are now a named belligerent in this conflict, right? Which
Hmm.
means he technically will declare war on you and your interests. So that way people will not get involved with Ukraine. Because the entire world right now, as I've said before, is scared of a boogeyman that hasn't existed since 1961. But the
Well, for
reputation
all
of that
intents and
boogeyman,
purposes, since 1991.
no, 61. I'm thinking a very specific period in time here, like the Cuban Missile Crisis, basically. The fact of the
Honest,
matter is the Russian military that you see today pales in comparison to the Russian military of the Cuban Missile Crisis. See, the thing is they've carried that reputation and that stigma and that fear this entire time because they have a nuclear arsenal. You can fall back on the reputation of your grandfathers, apparently, if you have a nuclear weapon. And I said this twice before. If there were 20,000, or sorry, if there were 20 million Russians in this conflict, and you killed 19,999,999 of them, if the last survivor of Russia had his finger on the nuclear button, the EU and NATO and the US would still give in because the fear of mutually assured destruction is too great. And I sort of understand that now. And it's really shitty because that gives the underdog an unfair advantage every time.
I honestly don't agree on the 60s. I think everybody's afraid of Russia
Well,
like
because
it
you
was
didn't grow
when.
up during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You weren't
No,
born into it.
I wasn't born yet. I wasn't
And
born yet. No.
and even I wasn't. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't either. But my dad lived it and he served during it. And even during like Korea and Vietnam when he was even in Southeast Asia, they would do lockdown orders where they would have to shut down the mountain complex in Korea where he worked, and he wouldn't see my mom for like 2 weeks. Like he had to lock the doors, they'd close it in, and all communications out ceased. And then a couple of weeks later, he would pop out, and my mom was like, "Where the fuck have you been?" And then he had to tell her. So anyway, the thing is Russia's a shell of its former self. And the thing is it's a shell of its communist former self, its socialist former self, its dictatorship former self. Right now, you've got a giant population of Russian people, citizens,
Mm-hmm.
in the Federation, in the continent of Asia, who have been born after the fall of the Soviet
Oh,
Union, right?
yep.
Like, I'm 42 years old. Like, I can't talk about my generation anymore when it comes to modern society, right? It's the children of my generation that's considered modern society. And you have these children today who grew up in Russia post the fall of Soviet Union. They
Mm.
don't know socialism. They don't know communism. They were born into, well, a figment of capitalism that's a little different than ours, but they got to taste the Kool-Aid. They got Starbucks. They have McDonald's. They have Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They have Adidas, or they wouldn't have the tracksuits. You see what I'm saying? They had a free market. They've got iPhones. They've got Android. They've got shit. They got the Pirate Bay and Anonymous still, right? They don't
Uh,
know Putin's upbringing because they weren't born into it.
yeah.
So you have a dick dash tater dictator in Vladimir Putin whose only claim to fame was his one appointment during the KGB when he was head of the Stasi in East Germany. He had done nothing else after that in terms of responsibility.
Because the
So,
Soviet Union fell.
right. So the thing is he was the intel man, right?
Yeah.
He was the spook, the narc,
He's
the
the
intel guy.
spy.
He would report his findings to leadership, and then leadership would do something with it. Now he's leadership, and
And
his network of intel is fucking useless because he doesn't even have a cell phone. He doesn't he doesn't
he
connect
doesn't
to the
embrace
internet.
21st century.
He's still stuck in 1963.
No, he's stuck in 86, but
No,
he
before that. He's stuck. If you say 86, right? That was the beginning of the end. No, he's
yeah.
stuck in East Germany. He's still a Stasi cuck.
Mm-hmm.
He still cups the balls of Brezhnev and jerks off to pictures of those glorious bushy eyebrows, right?
I don't think it's that far.
Well, let's hope not. Anyway, I mean, he's been divorced since
And besides,
2014, so
one would argue that the bear is the one stroking his nuts.
whatever. I wouldn't want to have my nuts stroked by something with claws that are 6 inches long, curved, and very sharp. Fuck that.
Well, I'm just saying.
Anyway, so in the interest of getting to the getting today, I promise I would spare you um, dragging this out. Let's just go ahead and let's get through this because apparently Scott's not going to make it. Warsaw sent me a bunch of stuff today, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, Anybody who is on my Discord server is more than welcome. Okay? You can join. The link is in the description below. If you have stories or details of this conflict, feel free to cut and paste the links. I have a room in a text channel in my server. It's called War Never Changes. And you just drop it in there. And if I can corroborate your story, I will put it on the show. I'll even give you credit for it. So anything you can provide, I'll gladly use it. However, just bear in mind, if a bunch of you do that, the show will run longer. I will get less sleep. I might be grumpy. Anyway,
You are grumpy.
I'm not that grumpy. I had my IPAs tonight. We're straight. All right, so let's go ahead and get started because we do have quite a bit to get through. And my first story today picks up early in the morning um, in Ukraine. But it did my RSS feed started giving me information right at the end of the show yesterday. So for me, the story started. Here's a picture for you. I think, bing, there it is. She's got this like hands up, don't shoot, comrade look on her face. And this was 11:31 p.m. Central Standard Time. So this was after the show
Mm.
yesterday, and 7:32 a.m. Ukrainian time. So I guess the minute was changing as I started writing this. Russian authorities, this is the newest statistic now. Russian authorities have arrested over 13,000 anti-war protesters, and it's cracked down on what they call dissidents within the country. People across the country are protesting Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine, beginning a war that has killed at least 331. That number, I don't buy it. That's bogus. That's way too low. When they take out they're talking about casualties in Ukraine, 331. Fact of the matter is when they hit a high-rise apartment complex, that's probably 331, especially if nobody evacuated it. When they talk about these buildings that come down and there's dozens of people trapped, how many of them do you think you're going to get out alive before you take out the 300 tons of rubble on top of them? Anyway. Oh, so Warsaw is in the chat, but he's probably going to... Well, if history's a good teacher, he's probably going to go to bed early, so he probably didn't jump in for that reason. But we're glad to see you in the audience. Anyway. So yeah, I wrote a little caption here that said that number seems a little bit low to me. And I think that seems low to most of you, too, especially seeing... oh, I wish I saved the picture. There was a picture that was posted today of the evacuation corridors failing once again, and an entire family of people, a wife and her children, I don't think the husband was there, but the wife and the children were killed by a mortar strike on the evacuation column. And they're dead in the street. And it's like, it's a messed up picture, because they're just dressed up in winter clothing on foot, and they're laid out in the street, and then like the Ukrainian military cover them, and like you can see how humanized this is, because it's like a woman and her kids dead, and a pet carrier and a bunch of her luggage strewn out across the street. It's horrible, but so is war. So war is shit. Anyway, I probably forgot.
War is hell.
Before I started the show, I was gonna mention that this is the updated battle map essentially for the splash screen today, as of yesterday. These always fall about a day behind, so they can sort of
kill our enemies.
Well, no. I mean, the map that they give me is the day before the day that I'm broadcasting this, because they take all the stories and they collaborate all the information, and then they fix the map. So this is as of yesterday. This is subject to change, so if I get a new map tomorrow on the 8th, it'll say March 7th to have the updated statistics. It falls behind slightly, because of, fact-finding or whatnot. That's why I picked it today, because it actually took the time to show the capital, and it showed like the troop movements like I did in the photos yesterday with the arrows, and I can see that my arrows are a little off in comparison. Oh yeah. So like Al's out there saying that according to the locals, this is a common Russian tactic, which is using the evacuation routes as kill boxes. You're absolutely right. Russian military doctrine is total war. So there are no civilians. Like the Putin. The president Vladimir Putin said it himself. He said,
The
"Look,
Putin.
the Putin, yeah." Basically, what he was saying is the reason that he is now. This is a guy who doesn't have access to TV right away. He doesn't have access to the internet or a cell phone. But based off of what he has seen, he's saying that, listen, the reason I'm hitting these buildings that you say are civilian targets are because the civilian population have armed themselves and they are attacking my soldiers, which makes them direct enemy combatants, which means the buildings that they hide in are military targets. Pretty absurd, but he's technically not wrong in the rules of war.
Technically not wrong, but again, we also know that not every civilian is taking up arms.
Doesn't matter. He says that even if there's one in that building, That building is now compromised because they go on the premise of, well, those all the other people could have stopped that guy. And on top of that, he's not even waiting for confirmation. He just sees a building and he's like, take it out. We don't even know if there's anybody in there. Somebody in there is going to shoot back at us. Just take it out. He's putting the cart before the horse. Let's be honest.
I really wish the Ukrainians could get the Russians to cross the border into Poland or into Romania or somewhere. One of those NATO countries, so we could just end this.
That ain't going to stop it. I'm telling you. Even if that happened, even if a Polish aircraft is shot down over Ukraine, they won't do a damn thing about it. That's the sad reality of the situation. They're reneging on their renegs. No. See, like, we'll get to it. You'll see. I'll point this out as we go along. Anyway, let's move on. 12:34 a.m., so about an hour later. It's now 8:34 Ukrainian time, so dawn has passed, but you can tell in the last couple of days, that answer is 100% yes, Warsaw.
We don't need a poll for that.
We don't need a poll. We all know what the answer to that is.
I don't even think Sean can do polls right now.
I can, but the fact of the matter is like, I could put a poll up that says, is Kate Beckinsale unspeakably hot, and it would still have 100%.
No. We already had that conversation. You can't have that one.
Why not? No, it's fine.
Because I said so.
Fine.
That's fine.
You can have that one. I'll trade her in for the younger model. I'll take Lily Adams. Anyway.
Okay, there we go.
Trust me, I win on that one. Humanity wins.
We both win on. I think we both win on that one.
It's fine. Fine. So anyway. Where was I going with this? Oh, so yeah, 8:34 a.m. Ukrainian local time. The situation here is Russian military has changed their tactics. In the beginning of this conflict, because of their incompetence or their lack of usable night vision equipment, the infantry, the ground soldiers, in the beginning, only operated at dawn and dusk. And then in the middle of the night in the dark hours, the Russian Air Force would take over because they have FLIR and way more sophisticated night vision, and they would strike buildings all throughout the night. Well, once they started getting into the major cities like Mariupol and Zaporizhzhia and fucking Kharkiv and Kherson, when they started hitting the major cities, street lights gave them what they needed to operate at night. So they were starting to become emboldened. This is the thing I had warned people about for days. You let them continue to do whatever the hell they want unchecked, they gain the experience of doing what they're doing, and they become emboldened and more effective. And the longer this goes on, the quicker they're going to overrun the country, because they take their tactics and they polish them. Instead of nipping it in the bud, NATO and the EU dicked around, and now these guys are starting to get their eye in, so to speak. They're dialing it in, right? Which is why you're hearing these stories of towns getting taken over and major things getting shelled, like airports and nuclear power plants. Because guess what? They attacked a third one today. These people are insane. They keep trying to mess with nuclear plants. What if one blows? Then what? That's a scary thought. Like, we talked about this, I think, 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
You can become a nuclear power without possessing a nuclear weapon. That is what the Russian military has just taught the world. Because we don't have a bomb, we'll just attack a nuclear power plant and make it go critical and melt down. Now that military that did it has become a nuclear power without a nuclear weapon.
Yep.
That's the lesson they're teaching the world, including terrorists. And we have sat back, not you and me, we, the world, has sat back and allowed this. Now they have the lesson. You can't take it back. Now that information is public domain. It doesn't disappear. You don't just collectively forget it. I mean, like, for an example, if you were an anti-gunner, your fantasy that you probably dream about and jerk off to is if everybody went to bed and one day all the firearms in the world vanished and all knowledge of making them vanished in human existence, that's kind of the impossibility of the lesson that the Russians just taught the world about how to become a nuclear power. Chechnya did it alone. Why can't Europe go in and just demand them to leave? Because the
The
thing
problem is
is,
Chechnya gave up.
they don't have the fight in them. That's the fact of the matter. They don't have the fight in them. I can't say it any other way. I could be. It sounds rude and wrong, but the fact of the matter is both world wars didn't end until we went in there and solved it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Them being whoever was in need. So that's why Europe can't just go in and demand it.
And I hate to say it like this, and excluding the Yugoslavian countries,
Oh,
okay?
Scott's here. Let me pull him in.
Yeah. Excluding the Yugoslavian countries, most of Europe has been at peace for far too long. They know what war is, but they don't understand it or want to get involved in it anymore.
Mm,
And this
I
is
don't know.
purely opinion. This is purely opinion.
I'm gonna try to see it your way. The way I'm processing this is the European continent had suffered 2 world wars.
Yep.
They're sick of it
Mm-hmm.
because the theater of World War for them, well, not including PTO. I'm just talking about ETO.
Yeah.
World War twice in Europe set that country back technologically at least 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they had to stop and rebuild their continent
Twice.
twice, uh, they weren't afforded the, I, and I know this isn't going to sound quite right, but they weren't afforded a pain-free industrial revolution like we were.
No.
So I think we took the forefront on a lot of development and technology just because we didn't really have a continental country to have to rebuild.
Though
Yes, we had
remember
to
we
rebuild our navy. Yes, we had to rebuild Pearl Harbor. Yes, we had to bury our dead. But
we, we did experience a Great Depression too.
that was before.
That was in between both wars.
Right. But you know what? The Great Depression that affected the whole world anyway.
Yeah.
That was it maybe not as impactful, but it was still a global economy. It was just everything was slower because
And
we didn't have
I would argue that
transcontinental aircraft yet.
the Great Depression actually pushed you know technology and advancement back at least 10 to 20 years.
Mm, no, see the thing is don't confuse fast tracking technology during war as stymieing technology development in peace, because that's not entirely accurate. If you think about how electronics uh, evolved since say 1977 until 1997, there was no war, and yet the free market was able to develop very quickly. But it's very niche. Like the Industrial Revolution mechanically, 1880 to 1920, something like that. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that was motivated by war because they needed a more efficient way to either end it or be more effective at it to reach a quicker conclusion.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You could argue that because Europe has been at peace for so long, they actually fell behind because they weren't at war.
Mm,
But
you
have
could say
they?
that.
See, it's not the fact that they were at peace that made them not proficient at it. I think what it is because they didn't participate on the same scale with the EU and NATO and the League of Nations. You know, like we had, for instance, Donald Trump, right? He would complain that NATO, when America would get involved in a conflict, we would send 30,000 troops. Boom, huge infusion, right? Troops, equipment, support. The UK would follow in suit. 10,000. Smaller country, smaller population, but they still contributed. And then you get like Italy, we sent 10. Liechtenstein, we sent 2. France, we sent 1,500. It's like, wait a minute, you're not putting in a proportional equal share. So they were inexperienced because they were inactive voluntarily by not participating in EU and NATO and League of Nations conflicts. It's their own fault.
No, what I'm saying is they fell apart. They fell behind technologically because they didn't go to war.
I don't know, man,
If you
because
think
like
about it, we
the
have been at war for the last 75 years.
the Gloucester
Consistently.
Meteor, right? The British developed a really good jet engine during and slightly after the war.
Mm-hmm.
Transcontinental air travel, that evolved during the 50s very rapidly because that was the baby boomer generation essentially, right? So like even though post-war prosperity reigned, there was a huge recession too because essentially what happens is, I've said this before, nothing sorts out humanity's priorities faster than a world war. Because everyone before a world war, they're all busy people. They're all doing whatever they want to do in their lives, right? Like some
Yep.
people are doing yoga, some people are doing Pilates, some people are doing Little League and karate. But when a world war starts, everybody is involved in some form or fashion, whether it's news coverage, whether it's munitions manufacturing, whether it's Rosie the Riveter putting together aircraft. You know what I mean? Like, the world comes together to resolve a conflict that the world is involved in. Nothing sets that faster. And for some reason, well, not reason, but the bizarre little side effect of that is national debt no longer becomes an issue. Everybody just says, look, write a blank check, let's get this shit over with, we'll deal with it after. We can recoup our losses in war reparations, or don't worry about it, we'll fucking deal with it later, right? That's kind of how economies and governments work during a world war. Because the United States was in quite a bit of a recession even during the baby boomers, because they
Right.
had contracts that were fulfilled, and now these manufacturers like, yo, look, we know we were in war earlier, but the war's over, and you owe us millions, which 1950 millions is a lot, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
even though all the war bonds were sold and everything, there was a hole to dig out of, and the whole world had a hole to dig out of. So we can
Yeah,
say
but
that
also,
the Europeans fell behind technologically or even just whatever. I'm not so certain, because at the time, people would argue what's the greatest tracked tank vehicle weapon on the battlefield, and we would say, oh, well, it's the Abrams, and then the Germans would say, nine, it's the Leopard 2A1, and the British were like, no, it's the Challenger. And then you all looked at, the specifications, and they all ran the same German Rheinmetall 105 millimeter smoothbore cannon. Like, we were all working in concert together because it was a NATO design. There's a reason why it's 556 NATO. There's a reason why it's 762 NATO, because we decided on a standard to keep everyone in the loop. So they didn't really fall behind. They fell behind in military experience, combat experience, because they didn't send enough of their boys to bleed. So nobody came back to say, yo, the battlefield's not what you think it is anymore.
no, it's also a matter of, for the last 80 years, whenever shit started anywhere in the world, everybody goes, where's the Americans?
Yeah.
Because we had developed a reputation of interjecting
Being the
ourselves
world's
and just
police.
pushing everyone out of the way, going, look, you guys, just get out of the way, we'll do this for you.
Well,
And
no, it's a matter of, besides the United States, and even during World War I or World War II, nobody had the industrial capacity that the United States had. Nobody. You can put all of Europe together, and it couldn't match the United States alone. match the United States alone. The fact that within 20 years they had 2 world wars and basically destroyed an entire continent twice.
I don't know, man. Germany had one hell of an industrial complex.
They could not compete with the United States. And I'll give you a perfect example.
Well, they got to do it, but they did it. We did it unimpeded. You see, we had the luxury of being half a world away, which means we didn't have to clean up factories that were bombed every other day. That's the other thing. If the United States was where the Soviet Union was, things would be very different because the battle would come to us. Like, imagine this. This is a huge what if, okay? What if the Soviet Union, Russia, today, brokered a deal with Mexico? What if the cartels all bought in with their corrupt politicians and the Soviet Union made a deal with them and they became a puppet military right at the southern border, which is wide open like a prison shower virgin?
Well, let's take that premise.
See,
Mexico
we've
has
never
oil.
faced
US
that
would be
before.
invading that shit in a heartbeat.
We've never faced that before in modern combat. We've never had
No, because
our
nobody
belligerent
Mexico's
in our
stupid
backyard.
enough to try and fuck with the U.S.
No, but that's the point, you see. They can't screw with us because they have to travel halfway around the world. We catch on that they're on the way. But if they were, like, if Mexico just said one day, we're sick of your shit, we're declaring war, right? They're in your backyard. It's a lot different conflict. It's a
Not really.
much different. It is absolutely. See, you say
Look
that
at
because you've never had to see
within
it. We've never had
within
to see that.
500 miles of the border.
Huh?
Within 500 miles of the border. Or
Okay.
1,000 miles of the border.
Okay.
How many U.S. military bases are there?
Quite a few.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter, dude. The whole point is the fight would come to you way quicker and way more often. That's the whole
And
point.
the fight would be wiped out in like half a heartbeat.
You're pulling a Patrick and you're underestimating your enemy. Okay? The last time the United States underestimated an enemy, 2 towers came down. Nobody thought that was possible.
The cartels do not have heavy weaponry.
Are
The
bullshit.
cartels
They probably have
like
they're
US
probably
military.
strapped better than the military.
It's because they're getting their shit from the Mexican military, which gets their shit from who?
Colombia.
Us.
No, not always. Well, okay, recently,
We are
yes,
the
Eric Holder.
biggest freaking
Yes.
weapon supplier in
Okay,
the world.
yes, recently Eric Holder. I can't deny that. But then
they
again,
don't
if you're
have-
in South America, they're getting it from China. So
They do not have.
they have
They don't have
dude, cartels
A-10s.
have
They
UAVs.
don't have artillery.
I
They
bet
would be
I
wiped
would
out in a
I
matter
would
of a week.
bet I would wager that there is some cartel douchebag with a howitzer,
Once they hear burr,
which they don't hear anymore because A-10s are sort of decommissioned. Sort of. They're really not active like they used to be. That was Desert Storm. Maybe Kosovo, maybe. I don't know. I do know this. There are 6 A-10s in Colorado that are in flight-ready condition that we could give to Poland, and we didn't do it. 6.
well, here's the better thing. We have a fleet of like almost 60 MiGs.
We do?
Yes.
Where did we get them?
Certain Eastern European countries after the fall of the Soviet Union for test and evaluation.
These
and then
are
we bought
really old models then.
MiG-29s.
Yeah, Cold War versions.
They're Cold War versions, which is
No
same as
modern
the
avionics and
ones
glass cockpits.
They're probably the same ones that Poland has.
No,
think Poland
I
took
don't
nothing?
think so. We talked about this yesterday. The Polish build things to a very high standard, which means they maintain things very well too. They keep their stuff
Yeah,
in
I
good
don't think
working
so.
order.
But they don't have the ability to upgrade aircraft like we do. They don't have an inherent and industrial complex catered to manufacturing aircraft. We do.
Maybe. I don't know.
We have.
We've
I'll give
had
you
the
a perfect
luxury of
example.
not having our enemies in our backyard. That
I'll
is
give you.
huge.
I'll give you a perfect example. A certain three-letter federal agency, CIA, stole a Hind helicopter
Mm-hmm.
that had broken down, and they said the Russians set it down. Well, we knew where it was.
We stole
We
a
went in
Russian
with.
nuclear submarine too. What's your point?
Yeah.
We've got plenty of shit hanging around we could give them.
I
Why aren't we?
I didn't understand estimate the enemy. That seems like a text-to-speech failure.
Yes, it does.
Someone on the panel thinks the enemy has better equipment and training than we do. I don't think necessarily they have better equipment than we do or better training than we do, but it's ignorant to say that your enemy can't do something that you've never seen them do, and then when they do it, you can't be the first person to act all surprised. That's the thing. Like when Putin issued his declaration that you would see a method of warfare never seen before, everyone called his bluff. They were like, "What are you gonna do? You've got clapped out T-72s and upgraded ones to T-90s, and you've got a bunch of conscripts, right?" Like, everybody underestimated him. And then first thing he did was he attacked Zaporizhzhia. He mortared and howitzered the living shit out of a nuclear power plant. That had never been done before. That was what he told us. He telegraphed it, and everybody, all the pundits and analysts and talking heads, they didn't know what that meant. They were just like, "Oh, he's probably just bluffing." And somewhere in a meeting in the bottom level of the Pentagon with that dipshit Kirby sitting there taking notes so he could not answer questions the next day, they never conceived that anyone would be crazy enough to artillery and mortar a nuclear power plant. Nobody thought that was possible. And I'm just like, you always have to have that little voice in your head saying, "What if?" And I think it's really naive to say, "Oh, they can't do this and they can't do that." Well, no, they haven't shown it to you yet. That's the fact of the matter, until they do it. Anyway, the worst part about it is the fact that they keep calling out the rest of the world for trying to help Ukraine while they are conscripting and bringing in the militaries and special forces of 3 other countries, and they get to do it unimpeded. That's an insult. That's an insult to warfare, the rules of warfare. They get away with it. You know what? Last I checked, we got our finger on the button too. So we can call their bluff, and yet we don't, because somebody that makes these decisions don't have a pair of nuts, because they're too busy capitulating to guys dressing up like women swimming against girls in college sports. Or did I get that wrong too? I don't fucking think so. Let's move on. I didn't want to keep this going for like 10 hours. Come on. Anyway, you were late, by the way.
Yeah, well, I didn't
Nappy
have
time.
power for a little while.
It's okay. It's all right.
No, like literally, we just got hammered with some pop-up storm. I didn't
Oh,
have power.
are you on call?
No.
Okay. All right, let's move on. 8:34 a.m. Ukrainian local time. Here's a picture. Russian ceasefire reported. Bullshit. Bullshit. The Russian armed forces announced a ceasefire regime from 10 o'clock Moscow time and open humanitarian corridors from Kiev, Mariupol, Kharkov, and Sumy. The Russian humanitarian headquarters announces this. This decision was made at Emmanuel Macron's request directly to Putin. So if you remember, I think it was yesterday, Emmanuel Macron of France had a conference call with Vladimir Putin directly. And the details of that meeting weren't really disclosed. However, this is the direct result. They claim that they will honor a ceasefire for the humanitarian corridors because of Macron's request. Essentially, what Putin did was he was like, yeah, okay, we'll do it, okay? Thanks, bye, click. And immediately he calls his artillery field commander and he was like, bomb that corridor. Because it's a kill box. And then you got to see the pictures of that woman and her freaking kids. I guess I'll just have to find that picture.
Yeah, but they weren't armed, so yeah, he attacked civilians.
Well, it's a pretty disturbing
He's been
picture.
doing that for days.
Oh,
It's
we know
actually
that.
a pretty disturbing picture because she was killed with her kids.
But look at it. Look at
Yeah,
it
right here.
from this perspective. Now we have certifiable proof that he's committed war atrocities.
Oh, we had proof before.
And
We had proof before, but now we have 100% proof.
We literally have video
So-
evidence of him using cluster munitions,
yes,
thermobaric bombs.
yes,
Well, the Ukrainians captured one of the thermobaric bomb launching vehicles, loaded
Right
with
now-
thermobaric bombs.
Right
yes.
now, we have so much proof of war crimes. If we don't do anything as either NATO or as the United States, we're going to look weak in the national forum.
That's the whole point. Haven't you figured that out?
Here,
Joe
I'll
Biden's
just
sitting
I'll
there with his
spare
tail between
you.
his legs.
Here, look, this is the picture I'm talking about right here. Okay, this is before they covered up the bodies. No word if the animal in the pet carrier died too. But basically, they were mortared on their way out. They planned on evacuating 200,000 people during that time, and only about 300 got out. So even if there were crimes, who's going to do anything about it? Nobody, right? Nobody's doing anything about it. So anyway,
Right. So I guess we just continue watching it.
yeah, let's just move on. So let's see. The next thing I've got is called saying the quiet part out loud. So let me go ahead and share you this. Mikhailo Podolyak. He was President Zelensky's personal advisor. Still is. And basically he was tweeting that the quiet part out loud. Apparently it's a pleasure for our friends to sit in a cozy cafe in Paris, Berlin, New York, or Budapest, slowly drinking coffee with a croissant and looking at photographs of Ukrainian cities that are being destroyed at this very moment. But our cities dying are still fighting. And he's kind of right. I kept saying this. The animosity towards inaction of the West is starting to piss them off. Because they're sitting there going, wait, we wanted to join you and this is the help you give us? Now, I know there's a lot of military or medical aid going there. There is a lot of munitions going there. Supposedly, right? A lot of like javelins and Panzerfaust 3s, Stinger missiles, things like that. That is not to be discounted. I'm not saying that at all. The aircraft thing that we talked about yesterday, it's that back and forth. Yes, we're doing it. No, we're doing it. Yes, we greenlit it. What are you guys talking about? We didn't even discuss this yet. That back and forth that takes days of misinformation, that's what's pissing them off, because they're told one thing and they put their hopes on that. They were like, hey, the United States is working out a deal with Poland where the Polish military will give you their MiGs as long as we backfill their Air Force with F-16s. That sounds great, right? It's just like when we negotiated a deal with Germany to send 20,000 troops of theirs to Slovakia, and then we backfilled their home guard with 7,000 troops out of Georgia. That happened. We did that. Okay, we are in the business right now of trying to make NATO and the EU take the lead on this, because like you know, folks like Squib would say this. It's their conflict. It's in their backyard. They should be the ones that lead this because it directly affects them immediately before it reaches us. And those people would be right. So we are saying, look, you go do it, and we'll fill in the gaps of your home guard. And then if things get really out of control, we're already here, and we can move forward and meet you if we have to. But this is your conflict and your side of the world. You go first. And that's the hardest part for NATO to deal with right now, because they're not really very good at taking the lead, right? They're good at ice cream socials and voting on resolutions where they agree that they will condemn Russia publicly. Squib saying no one is obligated to send combat troops. You're absolutely right. No one is obligated at all. You're correct. It's the previous reputation of the UN and NATO to jump into things to try to solve everyone's problems because they're trying to do what we used to do. Jump into things and solve everyone's problems. It's just how it works. Everyone got so comfortable and used to the idea of that they sort of expect it now. And a whole generation or two has passed since then, and now we're like, nah, we're not going to do that anymore. It's our blood, it's our material, it's our money, it's our debt. And what do we get out of it? Why don't you guys deal with it? You know, a long time ago, before Putin was a dick, I had this crazy idea of, could you imagine if Trump called Putin one day and said, listen, you guys want to act like a world superpower and you want to be taken seriously on the world stage? Next time a terrorist attacks that side of the world, you go handle it. You be the police of your side of the world. We'll be the police on our side of the world. If you need some help, give us a call. But until then, it's your show. You handle it. Now, if they had a leader like we had a leader, they'd have been like, cool, right? And they wouldn't sit there and try to take over a bunch of satellite countries that they used to have, because that's what dicks do. That's not how you become a world superpower recognized on the global stage. And yet, Putin reverted back to his Cold War stupidity, which is why we're in this situation in the first place. Anyway, there's a good discussion going on in the chat. I'm going to let that just go on, and I'll just keep reading it and monitor it. But we're going to move on to the stories, because damn it, we're already an hour in. I told you I was going to try to get you guys through this quickly. So, let's move on. 3:40 a.m. I get up because the dogs have to go outside, and I found a story that was from 11:40 a.m. Ukrainian time. And the Ukraine military updated its casualty figures. Well, I don't have a picture for you because that's what's scrolling across the bottom of your screen just below this picture here, next to my picture. Those are the updated statistics. I could show you the photo, but I just thought I would let it run the entire time during the show. So those are the updated statistics in terms of tanks lost, aircraft lost, military anti-aircraft mission or things lost, regular vehicles lost, troops lost, yada yada yada. You'll see that across the bottom. 4:42. It is now just after lunchtime in Ukraine. And this is actually a pretty good story. This is a feel-good story here. And I think I have the translation of this for you too. So at 12:42 p.m., President Volodymyr Zelensky had named the country's first ace of the conflict. He bestows the Hero of Ukraine title to him. So Russia had the Hero of the Soviet Union award, and because Ukraine left Russia, a lot of their traditions and military awards are kind of similar, right? So the Hero of Ukraine title was bestowed upon this guy. The translation there is near Vasilkov, Colonel Alexander Mostovi shot down a Russian Il-76 military transport plane and 2 Mi-24 helicopters. It prevented
Could
the
this
landing
be?
of enemy troops with their support weapons. This was by decree of the President of Ukraine, his 78th in the year 2022, on
Is this
conferring the
the ghost?
title of Hero of Ukraine. Well, okay, so the thing is, the ghost of Ukraine is a myth. It's a legend, essentially, a home-built legend, homebrew legend. They
Right.
never named who did it, but the theory was that it was this guy, because this guy was he's a retired he was retired from the Ukrainian Air Force active, and he took up a job as an acrobatic pilot for like air shows and things. I guess,
Mm-hmm.
cuz I don't want to say to keep his skills up, but it's flying is addictive. Flying fast is very addictive. It's like driving fast, right? So he did it because he had a skill, and he figured he can continue doing it in peacetime to make people go, ooh, ah, it's pretty amazing, right? Well, when his country needed him, he went right back to work, and he started putting Russians in boxes, essentially, right? So
Right.
he is regarded as the Ukraine's first ace of this conflict, and he was the name that was theorized to be the Ghost of Ukraine. Because if I remember right, the Ghost of Ukraine was the legend that one pilot shot down 6 planes in a single pass in one day, and it should have
Not in a
it
single pass, in
was
one
in one
day.
in one sortie he shot down 6 planes. So that's pretty amazing, right? That'd have been ace in a day.
Okay.
Well, they
Okay.
never
So this
confirmed
guy's
it.
the new ghost.
Well, no, see that they thought it was him before. People were like, "Who was it?" Nobody confirmed it. There was no gun camera footage, things like that, right? But
Right.
then his name came up before, and they never made heads or tails of it. Now it's official because of this action, not the one before. This action here, which means maybe they corroborated some of the other one before, but this one for sure, plus his name, because it makes for a great story that brings up the morale of fighting Ukrainians all across the country. They're like,
Right.
that's my broski, you know?
Right.
I remember
Well,
when
also
that
there
guy
would
was
only be
pissing
gun
green, shit like that.
there would only be gun camera footage if he used his guns.
Yeah, if he used missiles, then I guess it doesn't count. But you get the point.
Ah,
All right, so let's move on.
missiles count
But hey,
too.
first ace, cool, right? Like that's a good story if you're a guy on the ground watching planes overhead and you just see one explode and it's not
That's one of the
yours.
better stories that we've heard in a while.
Yeah, like they need it. They need pick-me-ups like this.
They do.
The outlaws here. So anyway, moving right along.
Your arch nemesis.
Nah, not really. 5:44 a.m. So dogs are starting to wake up because daylight in my window and the fox hunt begins. 1:44 p.m. Ukrainian time.
Because you have 9 of them.
Because I have 9 of them now. If anybody wants Yorkies, I've got 3 for sale. Just hit me up, please. I'll make you a deal. So this photo came from, I think, a hotel in Poland. And the story reads, hauntingly accelerated update to refugee statistics. The United Nations has now estimated Monday that 1,735,068 people. Now that's pretty good saying they're estimating and they give you an exact number, right? Have fled Ukraine since February 24th. And yes, Squib is correct, by the way. Gun camera photos or footage does work on missiles because there's camera on missiles.
Yeah.
Right up until the moment it strikes. So yeah, no, with a Y.
Except
Happy.
for the infrared missiles.
It's a joke, Ellis.
Yeah, no.
That's why.
So anyway, Poland has welcomed the bulk of the refugees, which is estimated to be around 1 million. I actually had a number. It was like 984,000 or something. So they just rounded up. It's fine. Whatever. Followed by Hungary with just over 180,000 and Slovakia with around 128,000. The overall number of estimated refugees increased around 250,000 from just yesterday. They're accelerating. These people are moving. And it takes a full day for them to traverse the country, too. If they can traverse the country without getting shelled by Russians who promised that that was a corridor. Fucking dicks. Anyway. Well, fine, dude. Whatever. Jesus Christ. Actually, no. You saw the videos of the bunker busters. You get to see it as it goes all the way in, and then, whoop, gone. Unless the camera's being towed behind it. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not a munitions expert. I don't claim to be.
Yeah, I don't think Russians are that smart.
No, they're not. And I have a story to prove that they're not very smart. You'll see. Anyway,
Russian weapons.
6:45 a.m. It is now 2:45 Ukrainian time. Curfew's like 2 hours away, roughly. I think they sound a klaxon before. I don't remember. I think Trey Yingst was on just before the curfew hit, and the first time he heard it, he mistook it for an aerial attack alarm, and then he realized that it didn't sound the same. And then he found out later that that's what they pretty much put off right before curfew, just to kind of warn people. Wouldn't it have been cool if they used the sound from The Purge? Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Russian skips out on the UN court hearing about the war. And then
Surprise.
yeah. So then me, being a stupid teenager once upon a time, I wrote, so does this mean that they have a warrant issued for their arrest for failure to what is it? I forgot what it's called now. Basically
Failure to show up to court.
Yeah, it's got a fancy name, but yeah, failure to show up to court. Russia has failed to appear Monday at the United Nations highest court for a hearing in which Ukraine is seeking an emergency order to halt Moscow's invasion. The gathering at the International Court of Justice in the Netherlands is focused on a 1948 treaty signed between both sides regarding the prevention of genocide, according to Reuters. Ukraine is arguing that Russia has been falsely claiming a genocide that has been happening in eastern Ukraine and is using that as a justification for its ongoing military action. The fact that Russia's seats are empty speaks loudly. This came from Ukrainian politician Anton Korinevich. They are not here in this court of law. They are on a battlefield waging an aggressive war against my country. By the way, it was called failure to appear. That was what the warrant was. Because I had
failure
that.
to appear in court.
I got that once or twice when I was a teenager. Because I was an idiot. Not much has changed since. I'm still an idiot. Anyway, moving right along.
Moving on.
Let's see. This has a photo called boycotts, so he's not happy in that picture. 2:47 p.m. Ukrainian local time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an Instagram post. This guy's really lighting up social media because he's got Starlink helping him, so why not, right? Anyway, he's calling for new sanction steps against the war for the sake of peace. If Russia continues its ongoing military action in Ukraine, boycotts of Russian exports, namely refusal from oil and oil products from Russia. It may be called embargo, but it also simply may be called moral when you refuse to give money to national terrorists. Boycott of imports into Russia if they don't want to follow civilized rules. Then they should also not be getting any goods or services from civilization. Let the war feed them. The international community has to act even with bigger resolution. When somebody loses one's mind, it is needed to forget about fear and commerce. One needs to defend oneself. Both states and companies have to be ethical. One has to fight an inhuman force, which is trying to destroy humanity itself. This guy is such a good speaker. Like, do you think he has time to have a speechwriter, or is this just coming from his head and his heart? Because, like, it just doesn't seem like the kind of guy who has canned speeches. It really doesn't. Like, he doesn't have time to have that. I think he's just being honest, like, with his nation and his people. And he's pissed, rightfully so. Anyway, let's move on. Apparently you guys don't have an opinion on that.
I'll let you do your thing.
Next picture I call Axis of Evil. I think I even left a caption on there, so if you're offended by that, Fuck off. 2:48 p.m. Ukrainian time. I forgot to translate this to Beijing time, but the Chinese foreign minister called Moscow the, quote, most important strategic partner to Beijing as war rages between Russia and Ukraine for the 12th straight day. No matter how perilous the international landscape, we will maintain our strategic focus and promote the development of a comprehensive China-Russia partnership in the new era. This came from a man named Wang Yi. He said this at a news conference Monday at the annual meeting of China's ceremonial parliament. Ceremonial parliament or puppet circus show? Anyway, the friendship between the two peoples is ironclad, he says, and noted that Chinese ties to Russia constitute, quote, one of the most crucial bilateral relationships in the world. China has broken with the US, Europe, and others that have imposed sanctions on Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. Chinese officials last week said that they are not considering sanctioning Russia for the invasion, instead continuing with normal trade cooperation. Question: how do Chinese folks abroad feel about this? Like those who live in every Chinatown across the United States. How do they feel about this? See, here's a funny little statistic. The trade deficit between the United States and China is something like $590 billion a year. Flip-flopped, right? $590 billion. Do you know what the total revenue from trade between China and Russia is? Less than 50. So, if he wants to cut his own throat and say we're not going to trade with America, we're going to trade with Russia, well, can't wait to see you standing in the soup line, bro, because we spend 10 times more than they do. How are you going to maintain that relationship when you're broke as fuck trying to
They're
save
not.
Russia from a shit
They're
war
not.
and the one you're about to get into? Like, how long are you going to last? Then again, you know it's bad when when the China man is taller than the Russian shitbag.
Ooh.
Well, that's the caption I put in there, but it's pretty obvious. Putin's a pretty little guy, isn't he? Anyway,
Yep.
I'm being petty. I'm sorry.
You are just a little bit.
Well, because he's being a little shit.
Well,
All right.
everyone knows that.
So, let's see. 3:50 p.m. Ukrainian local time. An official. Do I have a picture for this? No. Okay. An official with the International Committee of the Red Cross said Monday that landmines, anti-personnel mines, had been found along the intended evacuation route for civilians in the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol. Dominic Stillhart, ICRC, International Committee of Red Cross, Director of Operations, said that the discovery by one of its teams attempting an evacuation underpinned calls from the humanitarian group for both sides to, quote, agree on details for safe civilian passage, including what time, exactly what road, who can leave, and if medical supplies were allowed to come in. Without this kind of agreement, the situation is extremely perilous for civilians, adding that the presence of mines is creating a hugely dangerous situation. The ICRC is currently working to evacuate an estimated 200,000 people from Mariupol. Now here's the question. Mariupol is near the eastern border with Russia in one of the Istans. I think it's Kazakhstan. Sorry, I'm not ultimately familiar with that part of the country.
I'll go look.
But the question I have is, who put the mines there in the first place? If you are that close to the Russian border, and you know that there is 155,000 Russian troops staged across many parts of your border, did you preemptively put the mines there in defense of your city? Or are you implying that the Russians in the last 12 days were able to come in swiggity-swoogity and bury all these mines around your city in the event that you want to evacuate and step on them on the way out?
Okay, Mariupol is in like the southeastern corner of
Yes.
the country in the Donetsk region,
Yes.
right next to the Sea of Azov.
Yes.
Azov,
What's the country right across from that?
Russia.
Okay, so that is Russia.
And that is part of Russia, as far as I know.
Okay.
Yes, it's
That
Russia.
okay, that reinforces my point though. If Russia's all along that side of the border and you know they're coming, did you plant the mines around that town to protect it from the invaders? Or are you trying to are they trying to say that no, the Russians came within the vicinity of that town and then mined it to prevent anyone coming out? Because generally you use mines as a
Here's a
defensive
visual.
tool. Hang on, let me get that loaded
That's
up
where
for you.
Mariupol is, and then on the other side is Russia.
Hang on, it's loading. Okay, so down in the southeast of that point is Russia.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, there's Donetsk,
Yep.
and that's the Donetsk region.
Mm-hmm.
So Mariupol's right here,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the border right there.
Okay, so it's like 25 miles about. I'm looking at
I'd say,
the scaling's at the bottom right corner, so I figure about 25 miles.
yeah.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
I mean, what that does is that reinforces my point, though. Is
Right. I just wanted to give us visuals so we know what we're talking about.
yeah, it's just now I think even Squib would agree with this. Landmines are sort of more of a defensive tool. You put them out
Yeah.
there to detract people from entering. You don't put them out there to punish those exiting. Like I would argue that most of the mines around that area were probably planted by the defenders. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'm just saying it just seems a bit too weird for me. I don't know.
Well, here's another question, and I know it sounds crazy,
Uh,
but do you think maybe some of those mines are from previous wars?
nah,
They're not. You don't think they're that old?
nah.
Okay. Just plain devil's advocate there.
But the only problem is when you dig them up, they're both made from both militaries are using the same mines, so they're all going to say made in Russia.
No, I think they're all gonna say made in the Soviet Union because they made that many of them.
They could be that old. Yeah, I'll give you that. All right, so Patrick has a question. Where are all the Russian wonder weapons, hypersonic missiles, high-speed torpedoes, etc.? Do they really have them or only a few? These guys don't even have night vision from what he sees. Okay, I can't really speak about the missiles, but I can tell you about the torpedoes. The torpedoes you're talking about, uh, they're very short range. They're called Shkval, Shkval. I think they have only an effective range of 9,000 meters. If you are within that 9,000 meters, kiss your ass goodbye. You can't outrun it. There's no way. It is stupid fast. But thankfully, because they're so short range and because our sonar is so good and their boats are so loud, they'll never get within range to hit one of ours. But if they
Right.
wanted to like sneak into say, well, Mariupol, to be honest, because that's right on the coast, right? Or pretty damn close to it. If they wanted to
Mhm.
sneak in right there and just hit every boat on the docks, they absolutely could. Like with impunity. Anyway, the thing about the missiles, I'm not even going to touch that one. I'm not going to claim to know anything about them. I just know that they've got what the Grad missile,
Grad.
the Grad launchers. Um, they have a lot of artillery. I think the artillery is based off a T-72 chassis. You see a lot of pictures of those coming by right now.
Definitely T-72.
Yeah, most of my Russian armored stops by like that. My knowledge of them, it stops around 1965. So anything came past that, I would have to sit down and study it for a while. Like when I did my research for wargaming, the era that we got to work with was essentially World War One to 1965. Anything past that, I'm not going to claim to know it. I could find out with the same sources. It's just my focus was before that, so I can't really tell you.
Right.
As for wonder weapons, though, I mean, few. I think the only big ones, Father of all bombs, obviously, um, the Satan 2 missile, which probably they don't have very many of, but they don't need very many. The Belgorod, I think, is what it's called. That super nasty, modified. I think it's an Oscar class. It's a boomer. It's gigantic. It's what they call a doomsday weapon. That one's scary, but other than that, they're pretty conventional. But they're evil, so evil convention. All right, moving on. 3:52 p.m. So this was 2 minutes after, actually. A senior Ukrainian official rejected a Russian proposal to evacuate Ukrainian civilians to Russia and Belarus. Now, that's kind of weird, right? Yeah, sure, you can evacuate straight to our concentration camps. Of course they're going to reject it. Are you fucking crazy? This is an unacceptable option for opening humanitarian corridors, as the countries suggested are the belligerents and the springboard for Moscow's military invasion. Well, duh. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said at a briefing, according to the... She said the thing about the unacceptable for opening humanitarian corridors into those countries. The Russian proposal floated that the only options for civilians fleeing Kyiv and its suburbs would be to go to Gomel in the neighboring Belarus. Civilians in Kharkiv and Sumy in the eastern Ukraine would have to flee to the Russian city of Belgorod. Belarus is a key ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, no, it's their puppet and his bitch, and served as a launching ground for Russia's invasion. The Ukrainian government is proposing 8 humanitarian corridors, including from the southern port of Mariupol, that would allow citizens to travel to the western regions of Ukraine, where there is no Russian shelling. Yet. Like, that should be ... yet. Because right now, they're pushing hard and fast to get to Odessa. And as soon as they hit Odessa, the ocean is closed. The Black Sea is closed to Ukraine, which means any aid will no longer be available through the sea. Just the facts. Then again, if there aren't any Russian warships in the area because Turkey closed off the entry port, and they very quietly let a bunch of our stuff get in underwater, not going to say which, but underwater, then they would have the ability to knock out whatever Russian boats were in the ocean, and then slip away because no one knew they were there. Because if you listen to Mike Pompeo for the last couple days, anything that we would do, that we could do, I think he said, would have to be covert. Anyway,
So
let's...
do it covertly then, right?
Exactly. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday. If we didn't want to give Poland F-16s so they can give away the MiGs, why don't we just give Poland the A-10s? Here you go. Have the A-10s. We'll give you the support staff that goes with it to ferry them over to you and show you how they work. Wink, wink. And then the planes land in Poland, and then the, quote, ferrying crew hop out and say, this is the A-10 Thunderbolt II. This is the GAU-8, and this is all the munitions it can carry. We have transport aircraft bringing more munitions that this can carry on the way. And then the Polish are like, great. So show us how it works. Wink, wink. And then they turn around and walk off and go play PlayStation. And then the guys who were standing there about to teach them go, they left their uniforms behind. That looks like my size. And they put them on. And then they go do their dirty work. Covertly. Wink, wink.
Covertly.
Anyway,
Yes.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. No.
No, if the Russians start crying foul.
Korea.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they start crying foul, just be like, I mean, I can get my mom. I can get my mom to teach me. If you really want to hear it in Hangul, I can get her to teach me how to say, well, that's just what you get for flying MiGs in North Korea, you fucking hypocritical pieces of trash panda shit. Anyway.
You don't need your mom to tell you how to do that. You probably already know.
No, I don't. I'm sure it's complicated. Let's move on. 6 p.m. So we are now an hour and 18, 6:18. An hour and 18 minutes into curfew. For the safety of the Ukrainian people. And I think I have a photo here. Let's see. Pick UN death figures. Do I have that? Let me make sure before I load up this other one. Pick 5K protest. Okay, I forgot to put that picture in there. Sorry, my mistake. Anyway, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights announced on Monday that 406 civilians have been killed and 801 have been injured in Ukraine since fighting began on February 24th. Of those 406 deceased, 27 were children. Most of the civilian casualties recorded were caused by the use of explosive weapons with a wide impact area, including shelling from heavy artillery and multi-launch rocket systems and missile and airstrikes. OHCHR, that's the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, believes that the real figures are considerably higher, especially in government-controlled territory, and especially in recent days, as the receipt of information from some locations where intense hostilities have been going on has been delayed and many reports are still pending corroboration. Of course it's going to be higher, especially if you pull up to an area where you don't find bodies, you just find parts. It's hard to say that that arm belongs to that torso that's still missing its head that we can't find, right? It's horrible. Moving right along. This story, I was at work and I was in the middle of eating my lunch, and when I heard it, I spit my lunch across the room because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 6:20 p.m. Ukrainian time. Phone call goes through to President Volodymyr Zelensky to notify him, "Congratulations, you've just been named a recipient of the Ronald Reagan Freedom Award for your indomitable stance for freedom and democracy." The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is set to announce the award Monday for Zelensky's courageous fight against tyranny. The world applauds Zelensky and all that he stands for: democracy, individual liberty, freedom, and hope. Chairman of the foundation and the Institute Board of Trustees, Fred Ryan, said in a statement, according to Axios, which first reported the award. Ryan provided the news of the foundation's award to Zelensky by letter and phone call, which was delivered during a meeting with Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova. Great! That and about $10 will get you a cup of Starbucks while his people are being slaughtered by Russian missiles. What useless fucking pageantry. Could you imagine sitting in your sit-rep room, hearing fucking missiles hit buildings nearby, and getting a phone call saying, "Congratulations, you've won an award. By the way, we'd like to talk to you about your insurance coverage for your car." It's the same level of, what the fuck is this shit? Like, you hang up the phone, right? What
Yep.
good are awards when your people are dying? Seriously.
Yep.
What good are thoughts and prayers when you need bombs and UAVs? It's absurd. You wonder why they're getting pissed. 2 hours pass. I have a picture for you. Here you go. They always look the same, don't they, when they get hauled off? Like, I don't know, man. If it wasn't for that patch on the cops' arms saying that they were Russian police, that could just be clearing a room at Mardi Gras. I'm saying, it just looks like it. Russian authorities have now arrested more than 5,000 anti-war protesters. And if I'm not mistaken, before the end of this show, that number was updated again, and it's much higher. Anyway, at this time, 8:21 p.m. Moscow time, they had arrested more than 5,000 anti-war protesters in cities all across Russia over the course, over the course of one day, according to their human rights groups. It is now estimated 5,138 people in 72 Russian cities were arrested on just Sunday as protests against the invasion of Ukraine swept the country, according to the OVD info. They are an independent human rights project focused on political prostitution. Sorry.
Prosecution.
Sorry. I don't even know why I said that. It's Freudian slip. focused on political persecution in Russia.
Persecution. There
I'm
we
never going to hear the end of that one. The figure represents the highest number of arrests in a single day since Russia invaded on February 24th. OVD Info reports that there have been a total of 13,508 arrests since the invasion. There were reportedly at least 2,426 arrests in Moscow alone on Sunday, with 21 protesters being held overnight. Okay, so they are releasing them, mostly. So it seems. What do? Pay us, please. They take your information. We got your name. We got your ass. If we see you out here again, you're going to disappear. That seems about right, yeah? I mean, that's the modus operandi of the Soviet Union, so whatever. Shall we move on?
move on.
Okay. A minute later, 12:22 p.m. Central Time. It is 1:22 p.m. Eastern Time, which, the last story was 8:21 Moscow time. So now we're in Eastern Time because I've got a story for you out of Washington.
Oh, goody.
Well, the Biden administration is willing to ban Russian oil imports into the U.S. without its allies in Europe doing the same. Germany is the biggest purchaser of Russian fuel in Europe and has rejected plans to ban Russian oil imports. Chancellor Olaf Scholz is saying that such a move cannot happen overnight. It is likely just if the U.S. does it if it happens. They also said that no final decision on this has been made yet. So let me get this straight. This is the part where I'm injecting an opinion. So if you don't want to hear it, tune out in your mind for a couple of seconds, but I think you probably do want to hear this. So we're going to continue to crush any recovering economy left in this country with stifling fuel prices, while the rest of the world is laughing at our lack of leadership, denying assurances to oil companies here for domestic oil production that won't drill on over 9,000 leases available because they're afraid that once they get started, the EPA is just going to regulate them to death and change the rules, much like how the AFTs like to fuck with people in the 2A community.
AFT.
Yeah, AFT. That seems legit, right? So if you didn't know, and I looked into this because at first, the first time I heard it, I was like, bullshit. The second and third and probably 25th dozenth time, I was still saying bullshit. But when you hear something so many times and no one else is calling bullshit, you stop and go, maybe there's some truth to this. Let me check. And unfortunately, this is the one time that Jen Psaki wasn't lying. And Peter Ducey's trying really hard to make her crack. But she stuck to her guns and she said the same thing over and over and over. And I verified it. It's true. We can produce oil domestically, yes. But we're not. And the reason we're not is actually not because of the government this time. They have over 9,000 drilling leases open and ready to go. I guess what they do is oil companies put in a bid saying we'd like to have that lease, and there's a bidding war, and then boom, it's done, right? Like the winner takes all. Well, the thing is to do so, to put out the rigs and get out all the people to put the rigs together and to get the crews to actually man them and to set up the infrastructure for their their logistics for food and clothing and shelter and everything. That's a major operation, right? Like imagine Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. It's out in the middle of Inuit territory, and all of a sudden a town just springs up and it's all oil company stuff, right? So they're bringing out rigs and trucks and drill bits and freaking hookers and cocaine and more beer than a man should drink in a day per 1,000 men, and they got to bring bedding and jackets and Kmart and whatever, right? All that's got to go out there. You're bringing a city to out in the middle of nowhere, right? And then you've got to maintain it. Well, to do that, that costs a lot of money. And then once the rig is
Right.
operational, maintaining it is a lot of money. And what they're saying, what Jen Psaki was saying, and the more she said it, the less defensive I got. She's saying that these oil companies are reluctant to take up the leases now because they don't have assurances that the EPA just won't change the rules halfway through the operation. So she was like, it's not our fault. They're just not taking the plunge. And what's funny is nobody's following up with, well, why don't you give them assurances that the EPA won't fuck them in 6 months and maybe they'll go out there and do it? When someone finally tells her that, and maybe Jennifer Granholm that, be like, yo, you can fix this. Tell the EPA to fuck off for the next 10 years. Then they will start doing what they're supposed to do. But in the meantime, because if you don't have any assurances, they're like, sorry, the risk isn't worth the reward. So they're not wrong, but they're not helping. Let me drag Warsaw Patriot in here. My
Yeah.
Polish hammer has arrived. There he is.
There he is.
Welcome. Even though I know you said you were staying up late, we're almost done. But I'm glad to have you anyway.
Yeah, thanks.
Alright, so let's go ahead and move on past the drill baby drill section. And I have a picture here called War by the Numbers. Here. So this is to give you an idea of, and obviously this is estimate, but this is the estimates of total military force capability. This is not total number of military force in theater, okay? Because in theater, if we go by the original numbers of the buildup, it's 155,000 Russian active personnel surrounding Ukraine. And then once they went in, the first, I think, 3 days, they only committed 50% of their troops. So about 77,000, 77.5 went in. By day 6 or 7, they called up half of the remaining reserve. So that means they had 120,000 in, and they still had about 50,000 in reserve. No, sorry, 30,000 in reserve. My mistake. Well, that number has dwindled even further. So, at 8:25 Ukrainian local time, a senior U.S. defense official pretty much held an interview that confirmed that Vladimir Putin has committed nearly 98% of his pre-stage combat power now in theater, which means he did sort of push all his chips in. You know, I did the poker reference before. Since the start of invasion, nearly 625 missiles have been fired into the country, although Ukraine's airspace remains contested, and President Volodymyr Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky there still has the vast majority of his fixed-wing aircraft available to him. Meanwhile, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has ordered an additional 500 American troops to Europe to bolster its presence there, while the Pentagon is sending air defense systems to Poland and Romania and aerial refueling craft to Greece. So, from what I heard, it was 500, 300 were going one way, 200 was going to Greece. Some of them were aircraft mechanics and artillery specialists or something like that, and munition specialist. So it's backfill again, but they're getting closer and closer east in the backfill. Anyway, so there are now about 100,000 U.S. military personnel stationed or being stationed throughout Europe. At 98% committed to the campaign, This leaves roughly only 3,100 troops and support staff for Russia left in reserve just around the fringe. Which sounds bad, right? But he's got Chechens in there, he's got Belarusians in there, and now he's trying to recruit Syrians in there due to their experiences in Aleppo. That's not saying he can't call up more active personnel from his country. He's got a contingency far out west, Vladivostok and whatnot. I'm not sure if these numbers count to his navy, but if it does, he's got the Pacific Fleet still out somewhere. He's got the Northern Fleet still out there somewhere. He can call up more if he has to. See, there was an interview today, I think it was from a Ukrainian field general, and he was really, really tired looking. And he said, they keep coming, we keep killing, and they keep coming. And that's what Jack Keane was saying about they're putting up a really great fight. And the resistance is admirable and incredible. But eventually it's going to become a numbers game. Because the fact of the matter is these guys are getting tired. And the Russian reinforcements, they're a lot fresher. You know what I mean? Like, they can cycle out their tired and bring in reinforcements that got some sleep. Whereas the Ukrainians, they're getting more and more fatigued with less and less food to eat. It's a numbers game. And, I think that's why their leadership is so upset, because they're saying, how much more do we have to prove to you we're fighting for our lives before we get something we can work with? Even though they have been getting stuff they can work with. It's just, they're not getting relieved. That's the big problem. These guys aren't getting much sleep. I think Zelensky, since this all started, he looks like he's aged 10 years already. Like, his face is all swollen, his eyes are all puffy. Dude ain't getting much sleep. That's for sure. Especially when you're on the run, because you've got Chechen hit squads looking for you. Let's move on. I got some mean words in this next story. I hope you enjoy them. It took me a little while to think of them. So here's the picture. You're gonna love this. Bing. So, 9:25 p.m. Ukrainian local time. There was an interview from a Russian military commander and prisoner of war in Ukraine, and he said that he and his forces were led to believe that they were invading the country because, quote, nationalists and Nazis have seized power. According to the video that surfaced, this is a screenshot of the video. Russian Lieutenant Colonel Astakov Dmitry Mikhailovich, hey look, now I've got two Mikhails, Mikhailovich was flanked by two badly battered and bruised men, as he said that they were told in Russia that, quote, Ukraine's territory is dominated by a fascist regime. Sorry, I don't know why I had a hard time reading that.
I have to ask,
Yes.
Sean, but
Yes.
you need to explain this to me, because I can't wrap my head around this logic.
Sure.
How can you be a Nazi and be Jewish at the same time? I don't understand that.
Exactly, right?
You can't. It
Right.
contradicts itself.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So cut them in another lie.
Yes.
Chalk that up. Move
Yes.
on.
I
Okay.
hate to say it, though, Putin ain't wrong, though. There is some neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and that's the founders and supporters of the Stefan Bandera group of Azov.
Well, don't give him a hair to split, though.
Don't give them a hair to split.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out there. Ukraine has a weird, bad history as far as Stefan Bandera is concerned.
Yeah.
Shut.
All right.
Ignore that. Ignore that.
So anyway,
Hey,
according to the
look it up.
video that was roughly translated, they said nationalists and Nazis have seized power. Mikhailovich went on about what he and his troops were allegedly told. He added, "You are in a tense situation going against your own commander, but this is genocide. The people are just getting killed." Question: just how fucking stupid are Russian military people to believe such obvious propagandist bullshit The only assholes in Ukraine are you guys. You
Mm.
brainwashed, uneducated, easily coerced, Stalinist trash pandas.
No, I like trash pandas. We can't call them that.
Oh
We have
no,
to call
because I saw that picture in the caption that I put in, and I saw those poor bastards' eyes, and that was the only thing I could think of.
I like trash pandas. I don't want to have to hate them.
Wow, you don't have to
You know,
hate them. Even the one in the caption's shocked, which is why I did the words "the truth" in Ukrainian colors. That was not an
no,
accident.
no, but yeah, hey, you know what? There's neo Nazis everywhere, dude. They're everywhere. So regardless if the Russians were accusing the Ukrainians of Nazis, it's a fucking bold lie.
I think I think there's a bunch of LARPs playing the part of Nazis.
Totally.
Honestly, there is no such thing as a Nazi anymore. I'm sorry. There's no Reich anymore. There's no brown shirts anymore. It's a bunch of idiots that have very
Ye-
straight family trees that are LARPing,
Well, you
thinking
know what?
they're fake macho.
You know what?
Hmm.
That Russian commander and his troops
Yeah.
did not see this coming.
Clearly, I mean their eyes are all beat down and blackened.
Yeah, well, you go
Anyway,
after.
Most of the Ukrainians are Jewish, by the way.
Yeah,
so yeah, Nazis. You would think that they would find some paraphernalia to even back their claim with as much territory as they've taken. Have they found anything that would suggest it? No,
no,
I didn't think so.
no.
So that should have told them something immediately. But,
Yep.
faithful, stupid, communist trash pandas. Anyway,
But I like pandas.
so now we're getting into the late hours, dusk, right? So 9:33 p.m. Ukrainian local time.
It's almost over.
It's almost over. Mikhailo, that's another one. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm want a new name.
Mikhailo Podolyak. He's a member of the Ukrainian delegation, said as of today, there are no results that would substantially improve our situation. We will have more effective ways to aid people who are suffering because of Russian Federation aggression. In terms of key political tract, which includes ceasefire, reconciliation, and the end of fighting, intense consultation should continue. Note, there are no regulations. There are negotiations. Oh, this was after he. Okay, sorry, I didn't type this out very well. What happened was is he attended the third set of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. And he was saying that as of today, there were no positive results or no moving forward in their negotiations
Yep.
because the Russians are making insane demands and the Ukrainians are like, that's a no go, right? So that's why he was saying they'll keep trying, but he has no faith in the system. And my note was, there are no negotiations. The negotiation is you get the fuck out of Ukraine and you go execute your Cold War derelict dictator, you invading shitlords. That's a negotiation. Go handle your shit in your own country and get rid of that little bald prick. And just be happy that Moscow didn't take a single hit from
Reminds me of
munitions.
Star Wars. Negotiations never took place.
Right. Anyway, moving right along.
Sorry.
It's okay. You're doing fine. So we're going back to DC. 2:39 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yay, back to DC.
I
Yay.
know. Sorry. This is the theme of the show, by the way. I called it reneging on the renege. The Biden administration is considering a possible ban of oil imports from Russia to the United States, but, quote, now no decision has been made at this time. What? Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Sunday that the administration is speaking with partners and allies, quote, to look in a coordinated way at the prospect of banning the import of Russian oil while making sure that there's still an appropriate supply of oil on world markets. We have been very clear that we're considering a possible U.S. oil import ban. No decision has been made at this time. You know what decision they did make at this time? They went to go beg and borrow from our enemies from generations past. They went to go speak to Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela.
Oh yeah.
They went to go speak to the Saudi oil embargo ambassadors or cartel, depending on how you look at it. The guys who killed Kyle Khashoggi. They went
Yeah.
to talk to the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran to ask for more oil. Now, I'm sorry, but I raised this question yesterday. Why hasn't this entire administration been put to trial for treason? They're paying the enemies of the United States' interest. They're begging for oil from those who fund terrorism or Russia's war machine. They tried to tap into the national oil reserves, strategic oil reserves, which is meant for wartime emergencies for the military, which only gave the United States a 30 hours worth of extra oil, and oil prices still shot up to $130 a barrel anyway. They're undermining national security with god awful policies, and yet nobody is calling it out, and nobody's even trying to stop them. Why? And the idiots who voted and put them there are going to continue to vote and put them there.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, how much more of a beating do you need? $7.95 a gallon today for premium if you lived in Beverly Hills, California.
Well, they can pay that in Beverly Hills.
Look at Oregon.
$7.95.
Check out Oregon.
Well,
What
that
was
was for premium, not regular. It's just ridiculous.
Welcome
paid-
to the world.
I paid $1.07 the day before the election for premium. $1.07. And yet the other day I paid $4.05.
Thank you, Joe Biden.
I can't wrap my head around it. I can tell you what's coming. The summer driving season's coming. You know what else is coming? You remember that fucking bullshit back in 2008 they called the staycation because nobody could afford to travel? That's coming. I mean, here's the funny thing. There's no Ford Excursion to cancel anymore because nobody could afford to feed it. It's already gone. It's extinct. Your last oil crisis ruined that. Dodge has already gotten rid of the TRX, the 707 horse. They got rid of the Hemi engine, or the Hellcat engine. It's gone.
And the Hemi. They got rid of the Hemi too.
All of them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know they're trying to go all electric, but you get the point.
And with that, they've lost me. They've lost me.
Anyway, I can drag you in, Squid, but I've only got like 3 stories left. I really don't want to make this 3 hours long. Hang on, let me pull you in. There you go. Willkommen. You gotta unmute though.
He knows.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, he knows. I heard him. All right, let's go on with, let's see. Oh, okay, so we made it. We have already made it into what will be day 13.
Goody.
And this is a good story. No, you're going to like this one. This is on the same level of the guy who got the hero of the Ukraine.
Okay.
You see this guy here?
We gotta wait for it to show up.
Sure. This guy here, this is the last time you're ever going to see him. Ever. Ever. Ever, ever. 12:28 a.m. Ukrainian local time. Early hours of day 13. Major General Vitaly Gerasimov, Chief of Staff, Russia's 41st Army. This guy. Confirmed. Killed in action on the outskirts of Kharkiv. This news came from the mayor of Kharkiv. I ain't gonna argue with the mayor of the city. They must have dragged this guy's body right up to him and said, "Get a load of this piece of shit. He's got a star on his hat." Dead. That's 2 major generals
And one
the-
Chechen.
in the Russian land campaign, and 1 Chechen. You're right.
One Chechen general and 2 major generals. So that means
It's pretty serious.
his top 3 generals, he's only got 1 left.
No, I think he's got 2 more.
Oh, he's got 2 more?
2 more.
Well, they must
2
be
more
sweating.
on campaign, and then he's still got the 2 that he meets at. Is it called the Duma? Well,
Yeah.
wherever he holds his meetings in Moscow, in the Urals, he's got 2 there too. But if he loses another one, I bet he's going to send one of those 2 down here. He's going to be like, get that shit under control or don't come back.
What? They'll die too.
They'll die too. You know what? Honestly, like Squib was right. The Ukrainians are putting up one hell of a fight.
Yeah.
And here's the best part, right? Think about it. If it's true and they haven't lost a lot of their fixed-wing aircraft, that means they're very smart with keeping decentralized, and they're probably landing in different places from where they take off from. So it's like the Russians can't follow them home and figure out where they're hiding them all. It's very clever. So they are still pretty damn effective. They're losing a lot of ground in the process though, and that's kind of scary. But it's going to go to guerrilla warfare, obviously. It's just, does it have to? Anyway, let's move on. I got, I think, 2 stories left.
Yeah, we'll see
3.
what happens.
I got 3.
All right.
Okay.
This will be good.
1:42 a.m. Ukrainian, so this is all local time. Russian forces have now reportedly damaged a 2nd nuclear facility by shelling it with artillery late Monday to early Tuesday morning. Though authorities say that there's not been any increase in radiation levels at the site. So, after what happened when they took over Chernobyl, and after they took Zaporizhzhia, the whole world doesn't care. All they want to know is, did the radiation leak? Did it blow? You know, like, they're only worried about themselves. So, the news has been very willing to facilitate that paranoia, and they just immediately say, but there's no increase in radiation levels at the site. Russian forces damaged a nuclear facility near Kharkiv that contains nuclear material and a reactor that could cause a, quote, large-scale ecological disaster Sunday, probably on the same scale as the large-scale ecological disasters of all the oil depots they keep blowing up. I mean, you notice Greta Thunberg isn't running over there going, how dare you, while she eats with her single-use plasticware and riding on a diesel-electric train. Never mind any of that. Anyway.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, Sean.
Yeah.
Based on the way you talk about some of these stories, why do you care about the Ukrainians so much?
It's not really that. I'm seeing the wood for the trees. That's the whole. The whole thing is it's one country, yes. It's one people, yes. But it's not going to stop here. It won't. We know this. This guy wants all the satellite states back. He's not stopping here. Once Ukraine, once Ukraine is brought to heel, you can just forget. What's that little country just next to it? I just completely forgot. Moldova. That'll just fall apart. It's the poorest country in the region. They're not going to put up a fight. They didn't put up a fight when Russia said, hey, we're bringing 9,000 troops here, deal with it, or else. And they were just like, look, we can't even afford to fight this, whatever. They're just going to roll over.
Oh, okay. Let's just say you're right about those two, Ukraine and Moldova.
Sure.
Let them step 1 foot into Poland and see what happens to them. Let them try. Poland will beat their ass so bad. They'll be like, they'll turn around to NATO and just be like, yeah, we know about, the fact that we're an alliance, but hold my beer.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Poland will go hold my beer.
They have a lot of fight in them. You're right. They do have a lot of fight in them.
Now, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there like some Polish politician that got killed in Ukraine that was actually investigating for the war crimes?
I don't have the source on that anymore.
there were a ton of reporters that have been shot at by Russian forces. Too.
Yes, that is true. I think we did that about 2 days ago.
Okay,
There was a
okay.
British
If
crew,
I'm
though.
correct, if you're representing Poland and you're a NATO government, that's technically an act of war right there.
No, reporting is
Okay,
different.
okay,
No,
but
wait.
that's
Was a Polish military official in the Ukraine? Was he in the Ukraine
It was
when
a she. It was a she.
mm,
it identifies an attack helicopter? Were they in the Ukraine?
Yes.
Then it's not an act of war.
because they voluntarily stepped into another person's country.
What Squib is saying is, once those Russian troops cross that border into Poland, then it's an act of war.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, it would be an act of aggression against Poland. It would be act of aggression against NATO. But I'm
yes,
telling you, Poland could literally turn around and tell everybody, "Hold my beer," and take care of this.
Oh no,
Well,
And then they could trash talk the crap out of the United States, going,
well,
you could have done this, but
of course.
well, not just Poland. What about Romania? We can't keep them out of the loop.
Romania, if they really want to take their satellite states back, they're going to have to take Germany. Okay, now
At least half of
Germany
it.
is not.
Germany is a weak ass nation right now, Squib.
Okay, you know what? Put your shit in check and sit down for a minute, son, and learn a little bit about world politics.
My God.
Germany doesn't have a big military. Its military is meant to defend its borders, but Germany has something the Ukraine doesn't. It's got
What?
money.
money.
They're going to rush to its aid. France,
Mhm.
England, and anybody else is going to rush to Germany's aid because of money. This is what I said in my video on Sunday.
Mhm.
Ukraine doesn't have anything that anybody wants. That's the first strike against them. Then they
Yep.
gave up their nukes, and that's the second strike against them.
They gave up
So,
their ace in the hole by denuclearizing.
right.
Yeah.
But they gave up their nukes not just because they were trying to play the good guy card, but they literally couldn't afford to maintain them. So the thing is, if you're in a strategic part of the world,
Mhm.
a lot of traffic passes through or something else like that, you have a strategic importance. People are going to rush to defend you. If you've got money, they're going to rush to defend you. If you have
Sure.
natural resources, they're going to rush to defend you. If they're the country next door and they're the buffer between you and the big bad wolf, they're going to rush to defend you. Ukraine is losing ground, yes, but
Mhm.
they are far from lost. Poland might be there going, having everybody activated and on alert and doing this and doing that, but they're waiting to see. They're
Mhm.
not about to jump across the border and escalate this and then potentially drag NATO into it because they decided to take it upon themselves. Poland will play the long game, they'll play the smart game. They'll let Russia screw up, and then they've got a reason, and that's all you need. And if you want to be on the side of right, you
Let
got
them make the
to
first mistake.
pretty much. Now, here's the
Mhm.
thing. There's propaganda on all sides. There's
Sure.
lots of propaganda, just like the whole, the ghost of Kiev or whatever. That's
Yeah,
that's just
yeah. That's a
it's like
morale
that.
booster type
It's
thing.
like that Trang Dong guy from the North Vietnamese Air Force that never existed,
Mhm.
right? Or Colonel Trang or whatever his name was.
Mm.
So there's a lot of stuff going on, and if you listen to the reporters, they're fucking morons.
Oh yeah.
They're morons. One reporter would be like, "We need to stay out of this because they've got the nukes," and then the next one would be like, "Well, what about all the children dying?" And then
Mhm.
they're talking about what they're seeing and they're describing it, and they have no clue. They're just pushing their agenda. You've either got one that's a warmonger or one that's a total pussy,
Mhm.
and people are sitting there watching it going, "Yes, this is what I should think," instead of forming an opinion on their own.
Well, if they listen to all of them, right? Like all sides of it, then they can realize, wait, you guys are all crazy. Or they might just say, well, you can pick a stance somewhere that fits in between all of those things. I mean, it's the harder path to take. But let me ask you this about Germany. How much money do they have left? Because Angela Merkel more or less lost her job because she practically bankrupted Germany trying to bail out Spain and Greece more times than I can remember.
Apparently, they have enough to put 100 billion towards their defense budget.
Fair enough.
Germany,
Yeah,
France,
Fair enough.
England,
Angela
Italy.
Merkel completely fucked over Germany.
She fucked over Germany, yes.
Well, that's why she's out of a job. But I mean, I was just curious because they must have a ton of it for as much as they lost.
Unfortunately, they
Okay,
lost enough to get rid of her. Okay,
look at
Yeah.
look at how many major global countries or companies are headquartered in Germany.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, they have the potential, even if they're in an economic bind right now, they have the potential. Once again, Ukraine has no history. They have, they're applying for credit with no credit history. Oh,
Yes.
you used to be part of the Soviet Union. Well, that's
A strike
so.
against you.
Yes,
No,
whereas Germany
those
and France and England and Italy, they're all old money.
Sure. Yeah, but strangely though, the nouveau riche is technically in Russia. I
You
mean,
know,
that's
Germany also has.
no. When communism fell and Russia became the Federation, and Putin and Medvedev kept trading who was president, that was the period of prosperity for the quote Russian oligarchs. That's when they started to be able to brag. That's when you would look in the Forbes 500 and find all these Russian billionaires all of a sudden. They all became super rich. So in terms of who the nouveau riche is, well, technically it's the enemy right now because it's the Russians and it's the Chinese. And strangely enough, one of the more neutral nouveau riche nations, which is actually being considered an emerging power, India, strangely enough. Their biggest export is physicians. They have a very fast growing upper class, but they still have a massive, like, lower class. And there's all these people struggling to just to become middle class. It's so out of balance right now, but it's an emerging power. I mean, it's
Well,
going to take time to settle.
it'll be an emerging power the minute those assholes in Calcutta stop calling me.
That'll never happen. That'll never happen. Anyway,
Well,
let's
you know
move
what else?
on because I've got
Well,
a couple
guess what?
stories
There you
left.
go.
Look, I, I said I wasn't going to do this for 2 hours, and we're 2 hours in, so let's get through this.
Well, keep
You keep
going.
bringing
Keep
people
going.
in now.
Well,
Yeah, you
because they
do.
ask, and I like to have them here. It's fine. I will do this for you. Anyway, so yeah, the last story I talked about, they've captured Chernobyl, then they attacked Zaporizhzhia, and now they've got a new facility outside of Kharkiv, which is on the eastern side, right? So this nuclear power plant thing on the map will update by tomorrow. You'll see that little radiation symbol in 3 places by tomorrow, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think what they're trying to do, honestly, like, I think they're shelling it to scare the people in it, so they stand down. Then the Russians move in, and if the thing at Zaporizhzhia is true, then what they're actually doing is they're rigging it with explosives, forcing the people to work there to keep the power on when they need it, or if things don't go their way, they'll force them to shut it down to, crush infrastructure to bring the rest of the people to heal. And then if things go super sideways, they can just say, back off or we'll blow the reactor. It's rigged with explosives. So they're playing this really smart in terms of being a dick.
Well, yeah, but they should have had the power shut off last week.
Well,
But
see,
now here's
I have a theory on that, and I think what's going to end up happening is if this resolves itself or ends, then you're going to see new regulations either from the EU or the NATO or us demanding it. That if you are in a nation that's under the threat of invasion, they're going to force you to shut down your reactors before they even enter your country. That way,
yeah,
when
but
they show up, it's just a useless lump and there's nobody there
And are
manning it.
those countries going to supply power to your country? Because
Well, see,
otherwise,
they're just going to have
that
to.
country's got to tell them to go fuck themselves.
No, I think what they'll
Yeah.
do is they'll force them to lean back on other power alternatives. So, for instance,
What if they don't have any?
then they pipe it in from the
How
nuclear
about
power
India?
stations in other countries. Like,
How about they route the power all the way to India instead of to Russia?
well, the thing is like part of the Ukraine joining the EU was to allow the EU to connect the Ukraine to the EU power grid. So, in the event that they had to shut down their local reactors, yes, it would tax the EU system, but the power would still be on. Or,
Ah,
if I can give you like a microcosm of this, what happened in Texas last year. Now, I know not a lot of you know about this, but green energy came in like an itchy blanket. And what they ended up doing is they shut down one of the 2 reactors in my state. They reduced the other one down to I think like 5% output. they cut down all the natural gas power plants to less than like 20% output. And then the coal and oil ones were even lower. They shut them all down. They cranked them, instead of cranking them up to 11, they cranked them down to 1. And they said, "But don't worry, bro. We got this solar and these wind farms. They'll pick up the slack." And then we had a thing called a bomb cyclone, which is a polar cold front, like a vortex, that settled right over Texas, and we froze for like 8 or 9 days straight. There was like 3 inches thick ice on top of the streets just outside of my bedroom. It was that cold, and the power went out, and like 40 something people in my city died from lack of heat. Probably old people and children that were clumsy or something, or didn't have enough blankets or whatever, right? So the governor, fucking pissed, said, "That's never going to happen again. Fuck your green energy bullshit. You're turning up that reactor, you're turning up those natural gas plants. This is never happening again." The CEO of, I forgot the name of the company that managed it, ERCOT, had to resign. It was a debacle. In the event that they make a new mandate to force an invaded nation to shut down their nuclear power plants, there has to be a contingency plan in place for them to turn up all their traditional power means, their hydroelectric, their coal and oil, or tap into your neighbor's power grid. There has to be a way to do that. And I'm saying
Right.
maybe
And
it doesn't exist now, but I guarantee you that these plans will be in the works by the end of this.
you can't necessarily predict that a country is going to get invaded.
This one
And
you
if
could
you're a
have.
sovereign nation and somebody's going to tell you to shut off your nuclear power, you're going to tell them to go fuck themselves.
No, no,
Now,
no,
you
no, no,
can
no,
say
no,
you
no.
could make it a war crime, but you guys were belly aching about war crimes earlier,
No,
so
no,
I
no.
ain't
What
even
I'm
going to go
saying
there.
is you're not telling them that they can't have it. You're telling them to prevent the enemy from getting it. So in the case of Ukraine, they knew it was coming. Ray Charles saw this coming, and he's been dead for decades. Okay? There was no mistake about it. And then when Putin put out this open threat of "you're going to see warfare you've never seen before," that should have immediately tipped him off to be prepared for anything. They didn't say that you can't keep it and put it back up once your invaders are gone. And you're right, you don't always know. But, and this is a question I don't have the answer to, so I'm not going to try to guess. But if I were to guess, I would say that the procedure to shut down a nuclear power plant probably takes maybe 2 or 3 days, start to finish. Because you can't just slam control rods into a reactor. You don't do that.
No.
Who was it? Fine Ape, the finest of apes. And I'm so glad he sent this to me last night, because I asked about this yesterday. I said, "Why don't they put nuclear plants in mountains or underground?" And he sent me a video about a power plant that was built in Switzerland. And the project started in like the 1950s, and something had gone wrong with it. Like one of the coolant tanks had condensation and it caused corrosion, and then the corrosion caused the outer casing of one of the reactor's rods to blow open, and then radiation started to leak into the water, into the air, yada yada yada. Everyone got out. Then they fucking capped it off and sealed the whole thing with concrete, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't answer the question of why don't you do it. What it told me, what I learned from that video was, no, that's exactly what you should do. Because
Okay,
what they ended up doing was they chickened out. They had poor maintenance, and it was a primitive design. It was an early design that was prone to condensation and corrosion, right? And they're trying to insist that today's new reactors aren't built to a better standard or design. And what they ended up doing was they sealed off the system, and then they monitored it for like a year, and then they decided, just in case, let's just fill it with concrete and leave it. It's in a mountain. You don't need it. It's sealed. It's entombed. So, if anything, his video sort of reiterated my point, because it was safer and
I'll be right
nobody
back.
died.
No, it wasn't.
Huh?
Okay, you have to have a reactor near a source of water or bring the water to it.
Yes.
Okay, and depending on how you bring the water to it, it could be very expensive.
Yes.
Drilling into the side of a mountain and burying something under a mountain is very expensive.
Yes.
Okay, mine shafts aren't exactly the most comfortable things to be in. They're not. I know that sometimes you can use an old mine for storage or something like that, but they're
Sure.
not. They're not. These are. If you want a big facility inside of a mountain, go to Colorado Springs. Okay, and our tax dollars paid for that. It's
Yes.
not
How
practical to
many
put a
billions?
nuclear reactor in a mountain.
Well, in
Here's the
Switzerland,
thing.
it was kind of necessary because it's a whole country of nothing but mountains. That's why they did
eh,
it.
they could put one next to Lake Geneva or something. I don't know. But look, the thing is, it's not the shutting down of the reactor that's the issue. It's
Hmm.
keeping the diesel generators going because the diesel generators are what keeps the pump going. The pump's going is what keeps the water circulating. The water circulating is what keeps it from melting fucking down.
If they use
Okay.
heavy water, if they use a graphite one, then that's all out the window.
I wouldn't count on it. All I'm
Here's
saying
the other.
is if I was if I was told to take out that nuclear power plant without blowing it up and putting radioactive stuff in the air, I'd
Hmm.
simply target the generators, the diesel generators outside the facility.
If they're outside,
What about an EMP?
No.
it's in a mountain.
And okay, this isn't.
Internally bring in.
I'll tell
But
you
this
what. I'll tell you what.
what
At the
science
end of
fiction
this
movie is this
video, I
on?
will take the link to the video that I watched and I'll leave it in the description. And anybody who wants to watch it can check it out. It's pretty fascinating because if you look at the way that the place was set up, there was only really one vent for the whole place for the cooling tower water to come out. It had a hydroelectric plant sluice feed the cooling system. This one did use heavy water, but they had a secondary design that could have used graphite for a cooling system instead, which I don't know how that works. I'm not going to claim to know that. I would need Gizzard Gary here to come to explain that shit. But, because he's like Homer Simpson. But, I think the idea is solid if you can feed the water in. Like that, you raised a good point. If everything is
No.
internalized, then it's I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem like it's a terrible place to do it.
No.
But
What
I
you're
mean, you
thinking
raise a
of.
good question, so I mean, I'm open to the possibility. It's just I'm gonna leave the link to the video I saw because the finest of apes put it in there. It's a history lesson about what Switzerland did, and in all honesty, they could have fixed it. It wasn't lethal radiation. It was just some radiation, and it died down over time where they could have went in and took out that because they dismantled the reactor. Okay, when this all went down, they left it for a year. They monitored it. They came back in and they dismantled the whole thing, which means they had access to everything, which means they could have fixed it. But what happened was is they got spooked by it and they said, "You know what? We're just going to go all hydroelectric. We're never going to even they weren't going to try it anymore." They did it once and they were like, "Nope, can't do it. I'm out." When they could have just said, "Okay, let's learn from this and do it better." And they didn't.
Typically, when you have an incident at a nuclear facility,
Mhm.
you abandon it at the very least the reactor, if not the whole facility. Who here
Mhm.
in this room was old enough to remember 3 Mile Island?
Patrick just mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember it. Hell, I've been there.
But that's if you use
Reactor,
heavy
I
water to
think
cool your
reactor number
reactor.
3 is the one that is deactivated,
Yeah.
but the building's still there and everything else like that. All right, Fermi 2, south of Detroit, is built on the site of Fermi 1.
Mhm.
Uh, they just put one on top of the other because it was such a, it
Here's
was,
the other thing with
you know,
building a nuclear reactor in a mountain.
Hmm.
To blast to make that cavity, you crack the bottom of the mountain. So if any radiation does get loose, it's going down into your aquifers.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, the
Which
mountain
is
that
why
they
the
chose
people in
was a
Nevada
mine
are
that they already
so
finished
pissed
using. So the place
about
was
letting
already
that
dug out
nuclear
the way
waste
they
come
needed it.
because that's what their
that's
concern
a
is. Because
lot
But
they
of
I
have
mean,
one of the
excavation.
biggest aquifers in the country right there.
think about where the water table is when you're in the Alps. It's not up in the mountains, dude. It's miles below them.
Let's see. When I was in the Alps, where was the water? It
The
was in the valley.
No, the water table. I mean, when you start drilling for water, like you're not going to drill 10 feet down a mountain and hit water. You have to drill through the mountain, right? It's down below it.
Correct.
So if they built
Okay,
this
when
thing
you have
into a
a
mountain
meltdown,
that's
when you have a
30,000
meltdown,
feet above sea level, the water table's pretty far down. I'm not saying it's
so
all the way down at the bottom, but you get
And
the
you're not
idea.
going to put a reactor, halfway up a mountain. You're going to put it in the base of the mountain,
the
Yeah,
reactor rods,
yeah.
under the mountain.
the reactor rods could melt through solid granite.
Yeah.
They can melt through solid granite.
Well, okay, look, I'm not going to claim to know all the nuts and bolts. I will put the link in the video. You guys can watch it. It's not very long. It's like 10 minutes. And then scrutinize it. And then if you want to come back to this tomorrow and kind of help explain it to me, I'm all ears, because it's just when I was done with that video, it didn't have the effect that I thought it was. I was watching it hoping it would show me why it's a bad idea. And at the end of the
I'll give
video,
you
I
an
thought
example.
no, not until you watch it. You have to see it because everyone
I don't
keeps
have
falling
to.
back.
I can give you a practical, real-world example.
If you're still going to go on heavy water cooling, then I don't want to hear it, because there's a different way to cool a reactor that doesn't involve water, and they
Let's just
showed
hear
it.
him.
They showed it. So if they go the
Chernobyl.
other route,
He's talking about Chernobyl.
that's a heavy water reactor.
Yes. What happened to said reactor core?
It melted through its casing.
Melted almost through 10 feet of solid concrete.
Right.
The Russians had to dig under the reactor
Yeah.
and pump it full of more concrete so it wouldn't go through it.
Yes.
The elephant's foot. Highly radioactive,
Mm.
very, very hot. To the point it will melt through granite, like Squib said.
Well,
I'm
okay.
back.
Like I said, watch the video, scrutinize it, come back to me, and we'll talk about it at length if you want to do that, because I'm fascinated by this. I think it's a great idea. What it also did was it explained why it takes a while to shut down a reactor, because the control rods don't just go from 0% all the way down into the reactor. It has to be done in a slow metered pace. And what ended up happening with this particular incident in Switzerland was the rods dropped in too fast, and that caused something to happen that caused this one bundle of rods to melt through the core. So just humor me and watch it. I'll leave the link in there. I'll leave the link in the Discord for you, but for the rest of the people watching, I'll leave the link to the video in the description, because it's a short video, but it's really, really detailed. And
Okay. Instead of your highly technical, very expensive, and non-diplomatic solution,
mm,
how about if the United Nations just passes a resolution that says from here on out, if you intentionally attack a nuclear reactor,
mhm,
any nation,
mhm,
that any other nation on this planet can use that as a declaration of war or something to that effect.
mhm.
Right now, we don't have anything like that.
Right, because
We
this is the
really
first
don't.
time.
And okay, so they've attacked one, they've attacked another. They're not causing radiation to leak, so nobody wants to get involved. I totally get that. But if they're going to make that a habit,
Mhm,
then we need to look at this as a call to action. Because let's say they did shell it to the point where radiation was leaked.
mhm.
At that point, does the United Nations do something? Does the United States get in there? Does Poland go, oh, hell no, if the wind blows the wrong way, we're getting it? Does
Exactly.
somebody say, go in there? So Putin is playing a dangerous game. Even
Mhm.
if he's not calling shots, whoever's calling the shots is playing a dangerous game by attacking a nuclear power generation facility,
Yes.
period. But
Yes.
right now, there probably is no doctrine about this.
There isn't. That's the point.
America has a standard. They design nuclear reactors to. The reactor building can actually take a direct impact from a 747. Seriously.
Yes. Yeah, and
You
they
can
also
you can
have
yes.
seismic sensors, so in the event of the earthquake, it automatically scrums. I get it.
And there's
Well,
no guarantee that the Russians did any of that stuff, what,
No,
40
they
years
didn't.
ago when they put this reactor in? Yeah.
6 reactors at Zaporizhzhia, but yes, I get your point. What I'm saying though is it's easier for NATO or the EU to create a doctrine saying if you are under imminent threat of attack, just shut your reactor off so they show up to an empty building that they can't make
Well,
or take advantage of.
Okay,
Squib is
you've
right.
got
It,
you've
it
got
would
to
have
get
to be
the
a UN resolution.
yeah, and
That's
you'd
what I'm
have to get
saying.
the
After
rods.
this is over, they would
You would
have
have
to
to
come
get
up with that.
You would have to get all of the nuclear rods out of the reactor and take them to a safe location.
After you
You'd
shut
have
it
to
down.
remove the nuclear waste. You'd have to.
Yeah,
And that takes
you're right.
months.
That's a timely
Yeah,
process.
yes. This is what I'm saying. You're being expensive and impractical and undiplomatic.
A whole war is expensive
Oh,
and impractical and undiplomatic. That's the dumbest fucking response,
And
man.
here, look, we're talking Russia and China. Do you think you get two flying fucks if they pass a resolution or not? They're gonna
No.
fucking do what they fucking please.
Every
finally got a good
belligerent
point.
nation never abides by the rules of war. They never abide by the Geneva Convention. They never abide by the Hague Convention. They still torture soldiers and saw off their heads and electrocute their nipples. So what's the point of setting a standard that nobody's going to follow anyway? So you
It's
might
for
as well
what
set
happens
doctrines to
afterwards.
shut
Standard
down things instead.
standard I was talking about was giving a free pass to anybody who just decided to take it upon themselves to go, all right,
Correct.
now we're going to get involved.
Correct.
You suddenly don't have the bad guy card because there's this resolution that says you can do this
Hmm.
if you feel that it's a threat to the safety of the world. Because when a reactor releases stuff into the
Affects
atmosphere, it
everyone.
goes around the planet.
Yes, it does. See, that's the
Yes.
Like
biggest
it,
concern about that one plant that's got the 6 reactors is it's kind of funny in a way because if the wind shifted just right, the Russians just signed their own death warrant because the reactor that they
Nobody
had
said they
was
were
right
smart.
off the coast of Russia. No, I know you said like I said, but the thing is in this particular instance, this is going to be the part where Putin would just be like, "Well, look, I'm 2 years away from the life expectancy of a Russian male, and I'm trying to legacy build, and if I don't get my way, and if I can't have Ukraine, nobody can." And then he would just go
no,
full retard and just blow everything anyway, because he won't be around to live to see the fallout of it anyway. I mean, that's what madmen do, right? You
Here's a crazy thought. Besides nuclear reactor, what if somebody shot a freaking missile at a freaking volcano that's in Russia?
that's
Could you imagine if one of those went off?
well,
You'd need a nuclear weapon to
you've got to
set off a
remember that
volcanic eruption.
a volcano is a pressure vessel that had nowhere to go before it blew. So if you actually blew an explosive into a volcano, you'd be doing the volcano a favor. You'd be relieving the pressure before the lava dome explodes. That's what a
But if they
volcano
had one,
does. It's
but if
pressure,
one was
pressure,
building up
pressure,
pressure,
boom. Like there's a video of a volcano just before it erupted. It's the most haunting thing I've ever seen because the whole volcano it swole up for a split second, contracted, and then burst because the lava dome pushed hundreds of millions of tons of this mountain outward, and then the weight of it came back down for just a brief second, and then the whole lid blew off of it. And
Did
it's
you
like
talk about St. Helens?
I think there was videos of even that one. I think that's a fair example too. But seeing the lava dome expand before it blows, you can't mentally fathom something as large as a mountain, like taking a deep breath and exhaling before it explodes. Like you can't process that, seeing something that big move. It's insane.
Hey, that's the mountain Sean wants to put the reactors in.
Yeah.
No, that's a volcano. There's a big difference, man.
actually, isn't that a failsafe if lava actually took care of a reactor from actually exploding?
Well, I
No.
can't remember the fancy name for it. I always called it the devil's asshole. But there's this, no, really, because there's a volcanic vent in southern Africa. Matter of fact, I think Top Gear even passed by it. They drove by it one time. But they call it like the belly button of the world or something like that. It's a wide open hole of just churning, bubbling magma. It never it never erupts, but it burps every once in a while, and big chunks just fly out over the sides and kind of create this big, like, it looks like a flaming asshole. I don't know any other way to say
There's
it.
a better example of that.
Even the locals, sometimes the fatalistic locals, will walk up to the edge of it and throw their garbage over the side to incinerate it. Like
God.
it's just surreal. But like this one video showed a guy years ago try to climb up the side, and then it burped, and this little blob of lava went over the top, and the guy just disappeared. And then they were like, "What happened to that guy?" And then the cameraman just kind of looked over, and he was like, "Do I really need to explain that to you?"
Great
I mean, like,
example is
Hillary Clinton probably jerked off to that video going, "Oh my God, I could just airdrop people into the devil's asshole." She
one of
probably
the
takes a bath in that
volcanoes in
motherfucker,
Hawaii
as far
has
as I
been
know.
continuously erupting for the last 20 years.
That's
It's
like
not
almost
like
every volcano in
explosive.
Hawaii.
It's just
It's just going bleh the whole time. Yeah, there's a volcano in Hawaii
constantly
that
putting
does
out
that.
magma.
Like it just constantly just goes bleh.
Slow
Did you
moving,
say
it's just blah.
did you say piping hot magma?
Liquid hot magma.
Yep.
I have that picture. I put it in one of my Pwnery's Penny arcades the other day. I loved it because he really hams up the last part and leaves his mouth wide open. Magma. Anyway, I got 2 stories left. Let's get through these because I have a bowl of Fruit Loops and Patrick's not going to fuck it up like he did the other night.
You hope.
I hope. No, I'm not going. I'm not staying in the green room after the show tonight. Kiss my ass. Anyway, 6:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is, the day in Washington is basically over. And this was like a post facto story, but they had a chance to recoup it. And I call this picture Saki Derp because she did make that face. I didn't Photoshop anything like that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki suggested earlier Monday, that the Keystone XL pipeline, the construction of which President Biden canceled on his first day in office, would not have made a difference in the nation's skyrocketing gas prices.
Oh shit!
Wait a minute.
What the fuck is she smoking?
Hang on.
I know, right?
Psaki made
She
the
must be
claim.
smoking crack.
Well, she is a ginger. Psaki made the claim in
That just
response
means
to
she has no
questions
soul.
from Peter Doocy, who asked her why the Biden administration is seemingly blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin for rising gas prices, which hit a new record high of $4.10 on Monday, surpassing the previous record of $4. Oh, sorry, it's $4.10 and 400ths, which surpassed the previous record of $4.10 and 300ths set in 2008. According to data from GasBuddy, weren't gas prices going up anyway because of post-pandemic supply chain issues? Ducey asked, citing unnamed outside analyst. Psaki replied that, quote, the increase in anticipated continued increase of gas prices is a direct result of the invasion of Ukraine. I'm sorry, but when does some puppet mouthpiece ginger from the most irresponsible administration in recent history become an energy fucking expert? Nobody has an answer to that, do they? No.
No,
Now-
but I know she's full of shit.
Yeah, well, she had a moment about 3 or 4 days ago, and that's the one where I was talking about that I checked her bullshit, and it actually turned out to be true. She could have fell back on the drilling leases, but the fact of the matter is Peter Doocy failed in cornering her, because when she said that, he would have said, what assurances do oil companies have if they take these leases that are available that your EPA won't turn around and face fuck them with new regulations 6 months in, and they lose billions in investing in a new drilling platform in the lease that you gave them? If he asks that question, she'll make that face right there. But then there'll be this really curious smell of whatever super spicy curry she ate the night before. Anyway, sorry, that was a nasty visual. All right.
Yeah, we really need that visual. Thanks, Sean.
Anyway,
Thanks a lot.
sorry. This is what you get for making me do 2.5 hours, even though I
Oh,
didn't want
boo hoo
it.
hoo.
All
Although
right.
you, although you
too
really
much.
wanted those Fruit Loops.
I really do. I'm gonna have them after this.
No,
All
you're
right.
not.
My last story of the day, because we are touching the early parts of day 13, so these will not be part of the stories tomorrow. I will carry on past this story tomorrow. 2:59 a.m. Ukrainian time, Tuesday. I do have a picture here. Bing! Look at that. That man's hair. I swear to God. I think he has like a Tesla coil he sleeps on. Anyway, the world has rallied behind the Churchillian figure of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for his bravery and resilience in the defense of his country. This is a buzzword. This started because of somebody in the media labeling Volodymyr Zelensky as Churchill in a t-shirt because he wears these Under Armour shirts and things like that when he does some of his press conferences, because it's probably one of the more comfortable things you can wear before you throw on a plate carrier and all your battle rattle on top of it, right? So he's just disrobing to his basics before he goes on camera because he's got a lot of shit to wear. Anyway, Zelensky in his speeches has thrown down the gauntlet to world leaders by telling them to stand up and do more to help. Slava Ukraini, which is glory to the Ukraine, was how Prime Minister Boris Johnson ended his video address to the Ukrainians last week. It's capitulation and cultural appropriation, let's not kid ourselves. His opening remarks were also in Ukrainian, so maybe he did take the time to learn it. Johnson speaks regularly to Volodymyr Zelensky, and observers think that he could be the world leader to shine in absence of strong U.S. leadership. Last week, following the Russian attack on the Ukrainian nuclear station, Johnson called immediately for the UN Security Council meeting on the attack on Monday in London. He also seemed to be leading the way as he stood alongside the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, and Canadians Justin Trudeau to rally international support for Ukraine. So, what makes him interesting? If anybody was going to be compared to Winston Churchill, it actually should be Boris Johnson, because he's half American and half British, like Winston Churchill.
Right.
He also has bad hair, like Winston Churchill. But he's also very outspoken. But I don't know. I think the best way that I heard him described is he's the lovable idiot, but he actually does have a brain. He's very intelligent. He puts off this air of simplicity because it's like comfort food. Diplomacy is it's an ugly game, right? It's chess. That's why they call it 4D chess and all that stupid platitude bullshit. But the fact of the matter is because he is so easy to talk to, and because he can talk in layman's terms, to the common man, he's very well respected because he's very relatable, I guess is a good way to put it. And the fact of the matter is American policy right now is trying very hard to insist. I'm trying to say this very politely. I think American policy right now, as weak as our leadership is, may technically not be wrong on this. I think they're trying to insist that, we started this in the show earlier. It's in your backyard. You take the lead. You're the closest there. You try to handle it. And if you absolutely can't, we'll try to help you. I think that's a fair thing to say. It's in your backyard, and y'all are right there. So get on it. If you need something, give us a call. I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. But I think because the EU is fledgling, and NATO has had a history of being codependent on the US to take the lead on everything, that they're fish out of water in this. And this might be a hard lesson for them, but it might force them to be what they were supposed to be at its inception. A group working together instead of just one group always taking the rest of them along the way. Right? It's supposed to be an equal party thing. Now, in the end, if they do succeed and do that, then the whole globalist agenda of that aspect of globalism is stronger. But at the same time, the critics will say, well, America took a back seat to this, so now we can't depend on them anymore, so let's just keep them out of our own little intermingled deals on our side of the pond. They'll start to isolate us because now we're not being insistent. Now, some would say, great, that means we don't have to stick our nose in everyone's business. That'd be fine. But then again, When's the last time you ever heard America not want to stick its nose in everyone's business? It's our policy. It's been our policy since the Great White Fleet. If you don't know what the Great White Fleet is, look that up. It's actually a fascinating story of a fledgling nation that nobody took seriously until after the Spanish-American War, and then we decided to paint up our soon-to-be derelicts, but they were still big, and they still had giant guns sticking out of them. We painted them all white with gold-gilded paint, or trim, and we sailed them around the world on a, quote,
Goodwill tour.
thank you, goodwill tour, when we were actually just flexing our muscles, being like, look how big our dick is! Because, you know, we
We're
just
Americans.
we just won the Spanish-American War. We had to show people how big our dick was. Anyway, 2 hours and 35 minutes. And I'm done. So, with that being said, I'm going to play this. And I'm going to remind you that this was the War Room. This was day 12. Tomorrow will be day 13. And we will be here. And we will start at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time as usual. And I will promise to try to keep it under 2.5 hours. And chances are we'll still go 2.5 hours. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Maybe check out my other playlist to see if my other interests might be of interest to you. Little spoiler, I've recorded 6 gun reviews since Sunday, so I will be metering those out and releasing all those one at a time. If you saw me on Instagram the other day, you kind of know what's coming. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you all tomorrow. Later.